Good evening, cherished companions. Tonight, we shall embark upon a deliberate and tender expedition into the realm of ancient Greek mythology and the profound, tranquil insights of therapeutic practices. Kindly dim your illumination, find solace beneath your chosen covering, and permit the cacophony of the day to dissipate into the ether. We are poised to accompany Asclepius, that remarkable mortal who ascended to the pantheon as the deity of restoration. You will uncover the genesis of medical science in Hellenic antiquity, witness how prophetic dreams directed remedies, and comprehend the enduring symbolism of serpents as emblems of vitality. Each narrative will unfurl with measured grace, akin to the turning of venerable, time-worn pages. Therefore, lower your lights, perhaps activate a gentle fan to provide a soft, ambient hum, and let our journey commence. One now perceives oneself situated amidst the undulating terrain of ancient Thessaly, where the nascent morning mist tenderly embraces olive groves, and the atmosphere is redolent with the fragrance of wild botanicals. It is here that our chronicle originates, not amidst the dramatic clamor of thunder and lightning, as is characteristic of numerous Hellenic narratives, but rather with a more subdued essence. The poignant misfortune of affection and bereavement that would ultimately bestow upon the world its most distinguished physician. Envision Coronis, a mortal woman whose raven tresses capture the solar effulgence with the luster of burnished bronze. Her movements through her daily obligations possess the effortless grace of an individual deeply connected to the earth. Meticulously grinding grains, tending to modest hearths, and meticulously weaving fabric upon a rudimentary loom. Her hands are perpetually engaged, ceaselessly fashioning objects of utility. She remains oblivious to the fact that Apollo, the resplendent deity of luminosity and melody, observes her from the concealing shadows of the cypress trees. One might justifiably ponder the allure that draws a divine being to a mortal female. Her pulchritude alone is not the sole catalyst, though she possesses an innate loveliness akin to that of wild blossoms, inherently natural and unconscious of her own charm. There is an additional, intangible quality. Perhaps it resides in the melodic hum she emits during her labors, crafting harmonies that even Apollo finds captivating. Or conceivably, it is her intrinsic benevolence towards the ailing and injured, who occasionally arrive at her threshold, seeking succor that she generously provides with unguents meticulously prepared from mountain herbs. Apollo approaches her, not in the full, blinding majesty of his divine form, which would overwhelm mortal perception, but rather as a youthful man with golden hair and hands bearing the marks of honest toil. Their affection blossoms in a manner characteristic of those more unsophisticated epochs. Gradually, through shared discourses and extended perambulations amidst the hills, he assists her in gathering therapeutic flora, and she, in turn, imparts knowledge regarding which roots alleviate discomfort and which leaves staunch hemorrhaging. For a period, they experience profound contentment. Apollo encounters an emotion he has seldom known, the serene satisfaction of mortal devotion. No grandiose exploits, no epic quests, merely tranquil evenings by the hearth, contemplating the advent of the child they anticipate. Coronis's abdomen gradually expands, and she gently guides Apollo's hand to feel the nascent stirrings of their offspring. Neither is aware that they are engendering the future deity of restorative arts. Yet even divinities, particularly those enmeshed in amorous entanglement, cannot indefinitely forsake their celestial responsibilities. Apollo must invariably return to his celestial chariot and meticulously guide the sun across the firmament each day. He must respond to supplications and ignite the inspiration of bards. He bids farewell to Coronis with solemn vows of return, and she, in her innocence, accords him her full belief, perceiving no cause for skepticism. It is at this juncture that the narrative veers towards its melancholic trajectory, a premonition almost palpable, akin to a shift in atmospheric currents. Isolated and enceinte, Coronis encounters Ischys, a mortal man hailing from a neighboring hamlet. In stark contrast to Apollo, Ischys is capable of offering her something the god cannot: a conventional existence, a husband who will be a constant presence each evening, children who will mature under the immediate guidance of their father. One can readily comprehend her deliberation, can one not? To adore a god is to love an entity belonging to the entirety of creation. To cherish a mortal, however, offers the tantalizing prospect of mutual belonging. Thus, Coronis makes the momentous decision that will ultimately exact an immeasurable cost. She assents to wed Ischys, perhaps entertaining the notion that Apollo, in his divine wisdom, would comprehend that gods relinquish mortal affections with the same facility that seasons transition. However, Apollo becomes apprised of her resolution through his hallowed crow, which bears witness to Coronis in the company of her new paramour. The avian messenger swiftly conveys its observations, anticipating commendation for its fidelity. Instead, Apollo's indignation ignites with such ferocity that the crow's pristine white plumage is transmuted to an obsidian hue by divine wrath. From that day forth, all corvids bear the somber coloration of Apollo's fury, a perpetual testament to how betrayed love can disfigure even innocent intermediaries. Divine love, when subjected to betrayal, burns with an intensity far surpassing mortal jealousy. Apollo's indignation manifests not as the vociferous, destructive outburst one might expect. Rather, it is cold and definitive, like the inexorable grip of winter upon the landscape. He dispatches his sister Artemis, the formidable goddess of the hunt, to mete out punishment upon Coronis with her silver-tipped arrows. This somber decree emanates from profound anguish, not malicious intent, though the outcome remains tragically identical. Envision the tableau on that fateful morning. Coronis is engaged in the mundane act of suspending laundry upon a line stretched between two olive trees, her abdomen heavy with the burgeoning life she carries. The textiles, unassuming linen tunics and woolen cloaks, flutter gently in the zephyr. She hums the very same melody that initially captivated Apollo's attention, utterly oblivious to the silent approach of impending demise. Her movements are now deliberate, meticulously safeguarding the life within her. Artemis materializes like a shadow stepping into the sunlight, her bow already drawn taut. The goddess of the hunt derives no gratification from this grim duty, yet she cannot gainsay her brother's imperative. There are no dramatic pronouncements, no ultimate words of condemnation. The arrow flies with swift, unerring precision, and Coronis collapses amidst the damp garments, her hand instinctively moving to shield the child within her, even as her vital essence ebbs away. But it is here that the narrative unveils its more profound truth concerning healing and bereavement. As Coronis lies expiring, an internal stirring manifests within her. not merely the nascent infant, but a profound melancholy that resonates even with the gods. She does not imprecate Apollo or rail against her inexorable destiny. Instead, her final conscious thoughts are dedicated to the child who will never experience his mother's lullabies or feel her tender hands assessing his brow for fever. Her ultimate utterances comprise a whispered supplication that her son will discover a tranquility greater than that ever afforded to his parents. Apollo arrives as her respiration grows shallow, and in that fleeting instant, the deity who commands the solar orb feels an irreparable fracture within his immortal heart. He perceives the exorbitant cost exacted by his jealousy, not solely Coronis's existence, but his son's prospect of experiencing maternal affection. The god who bestows illumination upon the world has paradoxically engendered only darkness, and the profound weight of this realization will irrevocably shape all subsequent events. The divine being who governs the sun cannot resurrect the deceased, yet he possesses the capacity to salvage the child. With hands steadier than those of any mortal surgeon, he executes the inaugural recorded cesarean section, extracting the infant from his mother's womb precisely as her spirit embarks upon its journey to the underworld. This singular moment is etched into Greek mythology as the premier surgical intervention, performed not from medical erudition, but from the depths of desperate affection. The infant, destined to become Asclepius, emits a robust cry, indicative of one ordained for extraordinary accomplishments. Apollo cradles his son and discerns in the infant's countenance an echo of Coronis's gentle disposition intermingled with an essence divine. This child will restore where Apollo has wrought destruction. He will assuage suffering where his father has inflicted it. The god immediately comprehends that this is both a boon and a burden. His son is fated to dedicate eternity to mending the ruptures caused by divine ire. Apollo meticulously enshrouds the infant in Coronis's cloak. Still retaining the warmth from her body and redolent with the aroma of the herbs she once gathered, he breathes into the tiny lungs not merely life, but a profound purpose. This child will comprehend anguish because he has been birthed from catastrophe. He will intimately know loss because his very existence testifies to the immense sacrifice made for his survival. Every therapeutic intervention he undertakes will serve as an homage to the mother he never knew. The god gazes upon his son and formulates a decision that will reverberate through countless centuries. This child will not be nurtured on Mount Olympus amidst the other deities, where he might assimilate their casual cruelty and divine apathy towards mortal suffering. Instead, Apollo will entrust him to an individual who comprehends both the inherent fragility of life and the potent capacity to preserve it. Someone who understands that healing necessitates not merely proficiency, but wisdom painstakingly acquired through lived experience. As Apollo bears the infant away from the scene of tragedy, one might perceive the quiet profundity of this moment. There are no resounding peals of thunder or miraculous portents, merely a father cradling his son, traversing the very hills where that son's mother once assiduously collected healing herbs. The cyclical pattern of demise and restoration has already commenced. Although neither god nor infant yet fully grasps its ultimate significance, the baby reposes peacefully in his father's embrace, oblivious that his mother's death will propel him to master the very arts that might have saved her. He remains unaware that her gentle hands, which once sorted botanicals and bound injuries, have transmitted their restorative touch to him through divine inheritance. But Apollo knows, and this knowledge weighs upon him like immutable chains. Apollo pauses at the periphery of an ancient forest where venerable trees stand in a silence predating memory itself. Somewhere within that verdant obscurity resides Chiron, the sagest of all centaurs, profoundly skilled in medicine and the esteemed tutor of heroes. The god understands that what his son now requires is not divine omnipotence, but rather the patient sagacity that arises from comprehending both mortal susceptibility and the meticulous artistry of healing. The forest appears to extend a welcoming embrace, branches parting as if recognizing the sacred essence of their mission. Avian life falls silent as they pass, and even the wind momentarily suspends its breath. This is consecrated ground. They are entering a domain where time transpires differently and wisdom accumulates like fallen foliage, rich with the decomposition of archaic knowledge, composting into nascent comprehension. As the narrative departs from this initial chapter of Asclepius's Genesis, one might ponder the peculiar duality of anguish and endowment. A mother's demise precipitates the emergence of a prodigious healer. Affection gives way to perfidy, perfidy to desolation, and desolation to the very genesis of medical science. Chironis's supreme sacrifice becomes the bedrock upon which every infirmary stands, the guiding principle behind every physician's meticulous touch, and the essence of every therapeutic intervention that alleviates human tribulation. Yet, there is solace to be found in the profound understanding that from the deepest chasms of sorrow, the most extraordinary benefactions can arise. Asclepius would inherit his mother's innate tenderness and his father's celestial potency, all tempered by the sobering realization that each individual existence is precious precisely because it is fleeting. This profound insight would not merely designate him a practitioner of remedies, but rather the preeminent healer, one whose endeavors are propelled by an intrinsic compassion rather than mere obligation. The sylvan expanse deepens around Apollo as he cradles his newborn progeny, and one can almost perceive the primeval tranquility that envelops them. These are arboreal realms, where the conventional passage of time dissolves, where venerable trees have witnessed countless centuries, and every encroaching shadow harbors the echoes of legendary figures who preceded them. The deity's ethereal footsteps make no discernible impression upon the dense, verdant carpet of fallen foliage. Nevertheless, an entity situated ahead of their path is acutely aware of their impending arrival. Chiron the centaur materializes from a cluster of ancient oak trees, akin to an apparition stepping forth from a vivid dream. In stark contrast to the boisterous, inebriated centaurs of mythological lore, Chiron conducts himself with the gravitas of a profound scholar and the refined composure of an individual who has devoted millennia to cultivating unshakable patience. His equine physique is robust and earthy brown, perfectly suited for the deliberate task of conveying injured beings to sanctuary. His human torso radiates the quiet fortitude of someone who has attended the births of innumerable foals and meticulously mended fractured bones with hands more delicate than those of any mortal physician. One observes as Apollo draws near his venerable comrade, for such is Chiron's true identity, one of the rare entities within creation capable of conversing with divine beings as an equal. The centaur's discerning gaze immediately encompasses the entire tableau. The god's countenance, etched with profound sorrow, the infant swathed in a woman's discarded cloak, and the pervasive scent of tragedy that clings to them both like lingering smoke. Coronis. Chiron inquires with a hushed tone, and Apollo's solemn nod conveys the entirety of the heart-rending narrative. The centaur extends hands that have cradled nascent heroes and ministered to dying warriors, accepting the infant with the assured dexterity of one who has safeguarded thousands of fragile existences. He possesses her eyes, Chiron remarks, and Apollo is visibly seen to recoil at the undeniable veracity of the observation. Even in slumber, the infant's visage bears a striking resemblance to his mother's gentle expression. It is in this manner that Asclepius embarks upon his formative years within the profound depths of the forest, within a cavern redolent with the aroma of desiccated herbs and ancient sagacity. Chiron's abode bears no resemblance to the opulent marble palaces favored by the gods. It is meticulously sculpted from the living rock itself, featuring recessed niches accommodating earthenware vessels filled with potent medicines and shelves meticulously arrayed with scrolls preserving centuries of accumulated healing knowledge. Bunches of medicinal plants dangle from the cavern's ceiling like aromatic supplications, and a modest fire perpetually glows at its core, ever prepared to steep restorative teas or warm therapeutic poultices. The cave exudes a vibrant vitality in a manner that mortal habitations never quite achieve. Water delicately permeates the walls through meticulously engineered channels that Chiron has directed over countless centuries, thereby fashioning natural cooling mechanisms and providing pristine sources of potable water. Fungi thrive in carefully cultivated patches, some designated for sustenance and others for their medicinal properties. The sagacious centaur has transformed his dwelling into a dynamic dispensary where every surface and every element serves the venerable art of restoration. One might envision young Asclepius taking his inaugural steps upon the yielding earth immediately outside Chiron's cavern. The venerable centaur observes with unwavering patience as the toddler explores, diligently ensuring he does not inadvertently stray toward the noxious flora that flourish in the forest's more shadowed enclaves. Yet Chiron never impedes the boy from interacting with the beneficial herbs, those possessing healing rather than harmful attributes. Even at the tender age of 2 years, Asclepius exhibits an extraordinary tenderness toward all living organisms. A natural question arises concerning the experience of being nurtured by a centaur. Chiron masterfully integrates the practical sagacity of an experienced rural physician with the profound, mythical knowledge of one who has educated both gods and legendary heroes. Nevertheless, his pedagogical approach is remarkably unassuming. He abstains from formal lectures or demanding rote memorization. Instead, he imparts knowledge through direct demonstration and permits intrinsic curiosity to guide the remainder of the learning process. Every single lesson unfolds organically from the bounteous offerings of the surrounding forest. When Asclepius reaches the age of 4, Chiron leads him to observe a deer with an impaired limb struggling through the forest. The centaur does not precipitously rush to render aid. Instead, he and the young boy settle quietly behind a fallen log, dedicating themselves to meticulous observation and comprehension. "What do you perceive?" Chiron inquires, and Asclepius articulates how the deer favors one particular leg, how its gait is noticeably slower than usual, and how it frequently pauses to seek repose against the trunks of trees. "Should we intervene?" the boy asks, and Chiron deliberates upon this query with profound earnestness. Such pivotal instructional junctures demand exceedingly careful handling. Indeed, we should, he ultimately pronounces, but with utmost circumspection. Fear possesses the capacity to inflict as much harm as physical injury. He then demonstrates to Asclepius the proper method for a gradual approach, speaking in soft, reassuring tones designed not to alarm the injured creature. The deer does not flee, perhaps discerning the inherent benevolence in their intentions, or possibly recognizing Chiron's familiar and comforting presence. Chiron's hands operate with practiced dexterity, meticulously examining the deer's leg for any fractures, discovering instead a deeply embedded thorn within its hoof. He extracts it with a bronze blade so exquisitely sharp, it appears to sever the very sensation of pain itself, subsequently applying a herbal poultice meticulously crafted to avert infection. Asclepius gently supports the deer's head, stroking its neck and murmuring soothing reassurances he has assimilated from observing Chiron's interactions with other patients. This engagement becomes the quintessential pattern of the boy's extensive education. Each passing day ushers in novel lessons, artfully disguised as commonplace encounters. A fledgling with a fractured wing instructs him in the delicate art of mending bones and the intricate biomechanics of avian flight. A rabbit afflicted with ocular infections reveals the paramount importance of gentle cleansing and the precise herbs required for alleviating inflammation. A serpent with compromised scales unveils the profound mysteries of dermatological ailments and their respective remedies, though Asclepius remains, at this juncture, unaware of the profound significance serpents will eventually assume in his destiny. By the time Asclepius attains the age of 7, he possesses the remarkable ability to discern dozens of medicinal plants through both visual identification and olfactory recognition. He distinguishes between fungi that confer healing and those that inflict mortality, discerning which roots assuage discomfort and which berries effectively reduce febrile states. More importantly, however, he is internalizing the more profound insights that transcend the limitations of any written text, enduring patience in the face of suffering, unwavering gentleness when confronted by fear, and the quiet, unyielding perseverance that constitutes the very bedrock of authentic healing. Chiron meticulously imparts to him the understanding that medicine transcends mere factual knowledge. It is, fundamentally, a profound relationship forged between the healer and the patient. A therapeutic compress applied with animosity will not affect healing as proficiently as the identical compress applied with genuine compassion. The centaur elucidates as they attend to a wolf afflicted with an infected paw. The botanical elements respond to our underlying intentions, and so too do the creatures we endeavor to assist. This principle is not to be misconstrued as mysticism, but rather as pragmatic wisdom. Patients experiencing elevated stress levels recuperate more slowly than those who maintain a state of tranquility. One can readily envision them on a quintessential morning, diligently collaborating within the venerable herb garden that Chiron has meticulously cultivated over the course of centuries. To the untrained eye, the plot might appear disheveled, with plants seemingly proliferating at will, devoid of any discernible arrangement. However, Asclepius is progressively learning to discern the underlying, intricate pattern. Taller specimens affording protective shade to more delicate varieties, roots that enrich the soil growing adjacent to herbs demanding fertile earth, and medicinal plants strategically positioned to safeguard vegetables from deleterious insects. Nature possesses the inherent capacity to heal herself. Chiron expounds as they carefully transplant nascent seedlings, with rich soil still adhering to their delicate root systems. Our imperative is not to contend with her innate sagacity, but rather to comprehend it and collaborate synergistically with its principles. He demonstrates to Asclepius how specific flora naturally coexist in their wild habitats, establishing symbiotic partnerships that enhance the resilience of both. Medical practice mirrors this dynamic, he further adds. A singular herb might offer limited succor. However, two herbs that operate in concert can engender genuine marvels. As Asclepius matures, Chiron initiates his instruction in the intricate discipline of anatomy. Utilizing his own unique physiology as a pedagogical exemplar, being simultaneously part human and part equine, the centaur serves as a living compendium of comparative physiology. He meticulously explains the circulatory pathways of blood through disparate corporeal structures, the mechanics by which muscles articulate bones, and the rhythmic pulsations of the heart that sustain vitality in both mortal and immortal beings. Asclepius acquires the skill to palpate pulses, to accurately identify the symptomatic manifestations of fever, and to comprehend the individualized tempo at which injuries undergo resolution. These lessons transcend mere physical understanding. Chiron educates the boy concerning the profound interrelationship between the psyche and the soma, how persistent anxiety can impede the healing trajectory of wounds, and conversely, how mental serenity can expedite the recuperation process. Observe the behavioral patterns of animals when they are afflicted, the centaur advises. They instinctively seek out secluded retreats for repose. They do not resist the inherent process of convalescence. Humanity could derive considerable insight from this profound wisdom. Yet perhaps the most pivotal lesson materializes when Asclepius reaches the age of 12 and Chiron himself succumbs to a mysterious malady that renders him enervated and feverish. For the very first occasion, the boy perceives his revered mentor as a patient, vulnerable, and desperately in need of succor. This profound role reversal instills in him a fear far exceeding any he has experienced when tending to an injured animal. A torrent of anxious queries assails his mind. What if his acquired proficiencies prove insufficient? What if he commits an irreparable error? What if the most sagacious being he has ever known is beyond recovery? Chiron, even amidst his debilitating illness, recognizes the profound pedagogical significance of the moment. Healing commences with the acceptance that absolute control eludes our grasp. He murmurs from his resting place of plush furs. His voice is raspy, yet retains its characteristic gentleness. At times, we achieve a complete cure. At other times, we can only offer solace, and occasionally, we must simply remain present with suffering until its natural cessation. He meticulously guides Asclepius through the intricacies of the treatment regimen, which specific herbs to select, the precise methods for their preparation, the appropriate intervals for monitoring changes, and how to accurately discern both improvement and deterioration in his condition. For 3 days and nights, Asclepius ministered to his venerable teacher with a profound filial devotion, akin to a cherished son attending to an ailing father. He meticulously prepared herbal infusions, ensuring their optimal potency, and deftly applied soothing compresses whenever the centaur's fever soared. Through the protracted hours when slumber proved elusive, the boy sat vigilantly, observing. Chiron's typically even respiration progressively grew strained and arduous, and the young Asclepius learned to decipher the nuanced indicators of a body locked in a desperate struggle for recovery. On the fourth morning, Chiron's fever finally receded, much like the gentle breaking of a new day after a prolonged period of darkness. Perspiration glistened on the centaur's brow, yet his skin felt pleasantly cool upon contact. His breathing became profoundly regular and calm. The critical juncture had successfully been navigated, and both mentor and apprentice understood that a momentous transformation had taken place. Asclepius had transcended the boundary from mere observer to active practitioner, from an ancillary aid to a primary caregiver assuming full responsibility. "You did well," Chiron uttered with understated gravity, but his simple words were imbued with the significance of official acknowledgement and profound validation. Asclepius perceived an indelible alteration within his own being, a fundamental shift in his nascent identity. The transition happened with such imperceptible subtlety that he scarcely registered its progression, akin to the slow, inevitable spread of dawn across a slumbering woodland. One day, he was a student diligently assimilating methodologies. The next, he was a healer wielding the power of judgment in matters of ultimate consequence, where the outcome hinged upon his discernment. As Asclepius entered his teenage years, tales of his burgeoning aptitudes commenced their dissemination beyond the sylvan confines. Wounded huntsmen actively pursued the centaur's cave, having heard whispers of a youthful practitioner credited with feats of seemingly supernatural restoration. Chiron observed with profound satisfaction and paternal pride as his protégé accorded every individual patient an identical measure of meticulous care and focused concentration, irrespective of their societal standing or financial wherewithal. The boy displayed an unwavering impartiality between the affluent trader and the indigent lumberjack. One evening, as they sat by their fire, compounding therapeutic remedies for the ensuing day, Chiron addressed the trajectory of his protégé's destiny with the measured pronouncements characteristic of a venerable mentor who had witnessed the transient passage of countless apprentices. "You've learned the totality of my accumulated knowledge regarding botanicals and corporeal injuries," he imparted, pulverizing desiccated herbs using an ancient mortar and pestle, whose surfaces bore the polished sheen of millennia of diligent application. But the art of mending transcends mere corporeal remediation. For the ethereal realms of dreams, the fervent petitions of prayers, the vital spark of hope, and the profound weight of despair also constitute integral components of the therapeutic process. He recounted to Asclepius tales of venerable sanctuaries, where the praxis of healing and the tenets of spiritual devotion were inextricably interwoven, where patients sought not merely corporeal restoration, but also a profound revitalization of the inner self. "The inherent endowments of your divine progenitor are manifesting within your essence," Chiron observed, perceiving the remarkable alacrity with which botanical specimens appeared to yield their restorative properties under the youth's gentle manipulation, and noting how individuals under his therapeutic aegis experienced an accelerated trajectory towards convalescence. "The imminent imperative will be for you to unravel the profound implications of embodying both celestial lineage and the sacred vocation of a healer." The centaur's words were confirmed as profoundly prescient. As Asclepius neared the precipice of adulthood, his innate capacities for restoration commenced to transcend the limitations of purely human understanding and skill. Lacerations and abrasions evinced an accelerated rate of closure beneath his hands. Pyrexia receded upon the application of his hands to inflamed brows. Botanicals appeared to amplify their therapeutic efficacy when gathered by his hand, as though his contact roused their most inherent restorative essence. Yet, an augmentation of potency invariably entailed a commensurate increase in accountability, and Asclepius began to comprehend the sagacious rationale behind his paternal placement with this venerable instructor. Chiron had given him a legacy exceeding mere empirical medical instruction. He had provided an unshakable ethical bedrock designed to orient his burgeoning divine capabilities towards empathy and benevolence, rather than towards self-aggrandizement. The centaur had shown him that authentic restoration was fundamentally dedicated to the preservation of vitality, rather than to the aggrandizement of the practitioner's self-importance. On the day Asclepius eventually departed the sylvan sanctuary to commence his vocation amidst the broader human tapestry, Chiron bestowed upon him a ceremonial staff, meticulously fashioned from a limb of the very arboreal sentinel beneath which their initial encounter had transpired. The wood was tactily pleasing, both polished and comforting in its warmth, mellowed and refined through protracted periods of deliberate craftsmanship. Remember, the centaur imparted, authentic healing necessitates both the profound sagacity to discern the appropriate course of action and the intrinsic modesty to reconcile oneself with the immutable forces of fate. As we observe the nascent practitioner's departure from his forest home, one might notice with what inherent grace he traverses the liminal spaces between disparate realms, bearing celestial endowments refined and humanized by terrestrial empathy, and exercising erudition elevated to sagacity through profound comprehension. The wailing babe, once delivered to these sylvan depths by Apollo, had now evolved into an unprecedented entity, neither entirely deific nor wholly mortal, yet uniquely equipped to bridge these two spheres and minister to each with equal efficacy. The inherent tenderness inherited from his maternal lineage, coupled with the profound sagacity imparted by his mentor, would serve as his unerring compass through the vicissitudes yet to unfold. The young Asclepius departed from Chiron's forest sanctuary, and one can visualize the substantial heft of the unadorned leather satchel draped over his shoulder. Inside were the initial implements of therapeutic practice, devoid of supernatural relics imbued with ethereal radiance, but rather modest apparatuses that eloquently testified to diligent effort and meticulous scrutiny. This is where we discover that the very genesis of celestial remediation originates from the most prosaic constituents. Envision him pausing at the periphery of a modest hamlet as the nascent sunbeams pierced the verdant olive groves. His inaugural clientele would not approach him on account of his celestial renown. Rather, their entreaties would stem from observations of his empathetic touch and his unhurried, non-judgmental comportment within their community. Within the historical context of Hellenic antiquity, the practice of healing germinated not amidst grand marble edifices, but within the vibrant tumult of dusty agorae and humble domestic abodes, locales where affliction patiently awaited the ministrations of an individual possessing the profound capacity for attentive listening. The leather bag contained rudimentary implements, whose simplicity might appear astonishingly basic to contemporary observers. There was an assortment of bronze, scalpel-like tools, each meticulously forged for distinct surgical applications. The most diminutive, no larger than an infant's digit, was ideally suited for the extraction of embedded splinters or the incision of minor pustules. A moderately sized blade, possessing an almost ethereal keenness, was capable of incising dermal tissue with precision during osteopathic realignment. The most substantial blade, substantial in its tactile presence, was reserved for profound surgical interventions that other practitioners hesitated to undertake. But these cutting instruments were merely the commencement. Enveloped within yielding fabric lay needles fashioned from bone, some rectilinear like projectiles for suturing lacerations, others curvilinear like nascent lunar phases for accessing intricate anatomical regions. Suturing material derived from ovine intestines offered absorbable ligatures that the physiology would naturally integrate during the recuperative process. These tools possessed no inherent mystical properties beyond the dexterity of the hands that manipulated them and the profound understanding of their judicious application. The villagers convened gradually, attracted by narratives disseminated by itinerant individuals. Here was a youthful practitioner, schooled in his art by the sagacious centaur Chiron, and evidently bearing the divine sanction of Apollo himself. The most compelling aspect, however, was not his celestial lineage, but rather the empathetic manner in which he knelt beside an ailing infant, palpating her pulse with digits that evinced an almost intuitive discernment of physiological rhythms. Envision Asclepius meticulously arranging his therapeutic preparations in that inaugural settlement, observed by inquisitive children who peered from behind their mother's protective garments. Earthen vessels contained desiccated botanicals in a multitude of variations. Salix alba cortex, willow bark, for analgesic purposes, mellifluous secretions, honey, for prophylactic anti-infective measures, and papaver somniferum extract, poppy extract, to induce profound somnolence during surgical procedures. Every container bore meticulous symbolic inscriptions, legible solely to adept practitioners, a nascent apothecary embodying the accumulated sagacity of countless generations. Observe his inaugural ministrations as an autonomous practitioner. A venerable agriculturalist approached, exhibiting a pronounced predilection for his left lower limb, his gait so severely impeded that his quotidian labors had become nigh impracticable. Rather than proffering an instant panacea, Asclepius initiated an inquiry. He meticulously queried, at what juncture did the discomfort commence? Does it intensify during the matutinal or vespertine hours? Could you indicate with precision the locus of your most acute distress? The subsequent physical assessment would bear a striking resemblance to procedures familiar to any contemporary physician. Asclepius palpated the farmer's leg with deliberate hands, assessing articular mobility and keenly observing the man's countenance for indicators of discomfiture. He uncovered a chronic lesion that had failed to achieve complete resolution, thereby generating persistent inflammatory responses exacerbated by daily exertion. The prescribed remedy was devoid of theatricality, a botanical poultice to mitigate edema, specific calisthenics to reinforce subsidiary musculature, and pragmatic counsel regarding periods of repose. But here is where his celestial lineage manifested its subtle influence. During Asclepius's meticulous preparation of the botanical concoction, an extraordinary phenomenon transpired. The verdant constituents appeared to yield to his manipulation with unusual alacrity, liberating their therapeutic essences with greater potency than they would for conventional hands. The resulting compound transcended mere medicinal aroma. It emanated an palpable aura of optimism, instilling in both practitioner and recipient a profound conviction in the imminence of alleviation. Reports of his efficacy rapidly proliferated throughout the compact settlements, and before the close of the afternoon, a queue of individuals seeking succor had formed outside the unpretentious dwelling where Asclepius had established his therapeutic station. Every individual ailment presented a fresh opportunity for him to deepen his comprehension regarding the pragmatic implementation of Chiron's pedagogical tenets. A maternal figure presented her infant suffering from an intractable cough. He advocated for the inhalation of vaporized herbal infusions and instructed her on techniques to facilitate the child's respiration. A youthful agricultural worker, afflicted with septic lesions sustained during his labors, was afforded meticulous cleansing and dressings saturated with honey, a natural antimicrobial agent. One might legitimately ponder the methodology by which a youthful practitioner acquired the proficiency to employ such formidable instruments without incurring iatrogenic detriment. The elucidation resided in the virtues of enduring fortitude and meticulous scrutiny. He initially honed his surgical acumen upon deceased fauna, thereby assimilating the physiological responses of tissue to various incisions, the principles of osteal repair, and the dynamics of sanguineous efflux and its regulation. Each procedural methodology underwent rigorous experimentation and iterative refinement prior to its application upon a sentient being. The instruments themselves underwent a process of sophisticated development, commensurate with the expansion of his therapeutic endeavors. Asclepius commenced the fabrication of bespoke apparatuses tailored for distinct facets of restorative intervention. Slender bronze exploratory probes designed to investigate lesions without inducing further trauma, arcuate forceps for the extraction of extraneous matter from incised tissue, and diminutive saws for those dire circumstances necessitating the excision of compromised bone to preserve an endangered extremity. In critical instances, the extreme measure of excising bone became an unavoidable necessity to preserve a patient's limb from further degradation or loss. Asclepius's burgeoning collection of medicinal herbs attained an elevated level of refinement with each journey he undertook from one settlement to another. His keen observational faculties enabled him to discern subtle regional disparities within commonly recognized flora, revealing that identical botanical species could possess varying degrees of potency, profoundly influenced by specific soil compositions and prevailing climatic conditions. Furthermore, he diligently maintained an exhaustive journal, meticulously documenting not merely the efficacy of particular herbs for distinct ailments' maladies, but also the optimal periods for their collection to ensure peak potency, precise methodologies for their desiccation and preservation, and the innovative synergistic potential discovered through various herbal amalgamations. Yet, arguably the most crucial instrument within his evolving repertoire was not forged from resilient bronze or sturdy iron. Rather, it was his profound capacity for attentive listening. The venerable traditions of ancient Greek medicine grasped a fundamental truth that contemporary healthcare paradigms occasionally overlook. The profound journey of recovery commences with the genuine assimilation of the patient's narrative. Asclepius assiduously cultivated an unparalleled aptitude for interpreting not solely the manifest physical symptoms, but for comprehending the entirety of the individual, recognizing the intricate interplay of emotional states such as apprehension and optimism, alongside familial dynamics and societal pressures, all of which profoundly influenced the trajectory of recuperation. During a tranquil autumn evening, while meticulously arranging his various medicinal preparations under the soft glow of a lamplight, Asclepius experienced a profound revelation regarding the underlying philosophical tenets of Chiron's invaluable instructions. He grasped that the instruments themselves held less intrinsic significance than the sagacious discernment of their opportune and judicious application. A surgical blade, when wielded by an untrained or careless hand, possessed the terrifying potential to inflict grievous injuries rather than to mend them. Similarly, botanical remedies, when erroneously administered, could tragically induce toxicity instead of fostering restoration. True mastery, he realized, resided not in the mere acquisition of potent implements, but in the cultivation of the profound wisdom necessary to deploy them with impeccable appropriateness. This epiphanic comprehension fundamentally reshaped his entire methodology towards healing. Rather than impulsively reaching for his most sophisticated or dramatic apparatus, Asclepius invariably initiated treatment with the most unassuming interventions. Frequently, what initially presented as an intricate medical conundrum often yielded to remarkably uncomplicated remedies. Improved dietary regimens, adequate periods of repose, mitigation of psychological strain, or simply the profound solace derived from being genuinely heard and comprehended by an individual deeply invested in one's holistic welfare. The formidable array of surgical instruments, in Asclepius's considered judgment, epitomized medicine's ultimate recourse, never its preliminary stratagem. He assiduously cultivated a distinguished reputation for meticulously circumventing superfluous medical procedures, consistently prioritizing non-invasive and conservative therapeutic approaches before ever contemplating surgical intervention, which he reserved exclusively for moments of absolute exigency. This prudent and restrained methodology demonstrably spared an immeasurable multitude of patients from the compounding physical and psychological trauma inherently linked with invasive interventions, which, in many circumstances, harbored the insidious potential to exacerbate ailments rather than ameliorate them. With the cyclical passage of seasons and the progressive refinement of his formidable aptitudes, other practitioners of the healing arts began to actively seek his tutelage, eager to assimilate his innovative techniques and to utilize his specialized implements. Asclepius, recognizing the profound societal benefit, embraced these aspiring pupils with open arms, understanding intrinsically that therapeutic knowledge gained considerably greater resilience and efficacy when openly disseminated rather than selfishly monopolized. His pedagogical approach transcended the mere instruction on the manipulation of particular instruments. Instead, he endeavored to instill in his students the fundamental cognitive framework of a true healer, fostering meticulous observation, encouraging the critical interrogation of preconceived notions, and perpetually advocating for a comprehensive consideration of the patient as an integrated being, rather than a mere compilation of isolated symptoms. As one metaphorically journeys alongside Asclepius, traversing countless hamlets and witnessing his relentless dedication to perfecting his instruments and methodologies, it becomes evident how this robust, empirical groundwork meticulously prepared him for the more enigmatic dimensions of healing that lay ahead in his destiny. The phenomena of dreams and prophetic visions, the solemnity of temple rituals, and the efficacy of spiritual interventions all found their profound anchorage upon this unshakable foundation of tangible, hands-on medical expertise. In his practice, the precise scalpel and the fervent prayer operated in harmonious concert, each element amplifying the potency and efficacy of the other. The unpretentious leather satchel that once contained the entirety of his worldly and professional possessions gradually burgeoned into a comprehensive medical atelier. Specialized cases filled with sophisticated instruments, meticulously organized shelves laden with diverse medicaments, and voluminous tomes filled with astute clinical observations collectively heralded the genesis of the ancient world's inaugural medical academy. Yet, at the very core of this expansive enterprise persisted those foundational implements. Meticulously crafted bronze knives maintained razor-sharp through incessant application. Earthen jars of potent herbs replenished an innumerable number of times, and slender needles polished smooth by the tender, experienced hands that had meticulously sutured myriad lacerations. Arguably, the most extraordinary facet of Asclepius's philosophy concerning the implements of healing was its unwavering and absolute practicality. Despite his inherent divine lineage, which theoretically afforded him the capability to invoke celestial powers and instantaneously eradicate any affliction, he deliberately opted for a path of working within the inherent constraints of human medicine. He painstakingly refined this mortal art incrementally, through rigorous, meticulous observation and an unflagging, tenacious commitment to effort. This deliberate choice intimated a profound truth regarding the very essence of genuine healing, that its most efficacious manifestation arises when it reveres and integrates both the consummate skill of human endeavor and the boundless empathy of divine benevolence. The unassuming leather satchel, a seemingly modest container by contemporary standards, nonetheless harbored a collection of invaluable treasures, each representing the distilled essence of centuries of cumulative medical sagacity. Within its confines lay bronze surgical knives, honed to such an exquisite sharpness that they were capable of incising diseased tissue with surgical precision, meticulously avoiding any unnecessary laceration of healthy surrounding flesh. Diminutive clay vessels cradled a variety of finely powdered botanical remedies, the analgesic properties of willow bark for alleviating discomfort, the soporific qualities of poppy seeds for inducing slumber, and the soothing essence of mint leaves for assuaging gastrointestinal disturbances. Strips of pristine linen, meticulously laundered and re-laundered until they attained the silken softness of the finest fabric, lay prepared for their eventual transformation into sterile bandaging. Furthermore, a delicate ensemble of bronze needles, as slender and precise as individual hairs, possessed the remarkable capability to meticulously suture wounds that without such intervention would inevitably fail to coalesce and heal appropriately. One might understandably ponder how such seemingly rudimentary implements could conceivably effectuate miraculous recoveries. Yet, Asclepius comprehended a fundamental principle that contemporary medical practice occasionally neglects. The profound process of healing materializes not solely through the instruments themselves, but more significantly, through the skilled and empathetic hands that expertly guide them. Observe him as he undertakes the examination of his inaugural patient, an aged agriculturalist whose debilitating arthritis rendered every single movement an agonizing ordeal. Asclepius, rather than impulsively reaching for his array of medicinal preparations, instead initiated a series of probing inquiries that, remarkably, no one had previously deemed important enough to pose. At what specific times does this discomfort manifest with the greatest intensity? He gently probed, settling himself alongside the venerable man upon a simple wooden bench, its surface polished smooth by the attrition of countless years of diligent labor. What factors seem to alleviate it? What circumstances tend to exacerbate it? His perceptive hands then delicately explored the inflamed and distended joints with a touch so remarkably tender and empathetic that it astonished both the suffering patient and the curious onlookers. This interaction transcended mere diagnostic assessment. It was, in essence, an intimate dialogue between the dedicated healer and the afflicted corporeal form, articulated through the eloquent lexicon of meticulous and compassionate attentiveness. From within the depths of his practical satchel, Asclepius carefully extracted a diminutive clay receptacle holding a potent oil, meticulously infused with botanical essences, the precise preparation of which had been imparted to him by the venerable Chiron. This intricate process demanded weeks of dedicated effort. The judicious collection of specific plants at their optimal seasonal moment, their subsequent desiccation under meticulously controlled environmental conditions, and their eventual amalgamation with oil extracted from the highest quality olives. Yet, as he gently worked the soothing preparation into the farmer's aching joints, an unmistakable expression of instantaneous alleviation visibly smoothed the old man's weathered countenance. "The celestial beings have surely bestowed their favor upon your hands, young practitioner," the grateful farmer articulated. However, Asclepius modestly demurred, gently shaking his head. "The true benediction resides within the very plants themselves," he responded with quiet conviction. "My role has simply been to diligently heed the profound lessons they endeavor to impart to us." This characteristic humility would subsequently become his defining hallmark, as he consistently refrained from attributing to divine intervention what could demonstrably be achieved through diligent observation and assiduous, patient, scholarly pursuit. As the renown of his exceptional abilities propagated throughout the region, Asclepius progressively drew a greater influx of more intricate and challenging medical presentations. On one notable occasion, a distressed woman presented her child, who was consumed by a relentless fever that had persisted for a multitude of days. The indigenous wise women of the locality had exhaustively applied their traditional remedies without achieving any discernible amelioration, and sheer desperation compelled the distraught mother to solicit assistance from this youthful newcomer, who reputedly carried the essence of healing within a modest satchel. Asclepius reverently knelt beside the child's humble cot, his discerning gaze registering the accelerated respiration, the intensely flushed integument, and the involuntary tremors of the small physique, despite its elevated temperature. From his organized array of implements, he judiciously chose not a potent pharmaceutical, but rather a pristine segment of linen, thoroughly saturated in cool, refreshing water. Occasionally, he elucidated to the anxious mother, the human organism requires assistance in regulating its own temperature before it can effectively initiate its inherent restorative processes. He meticulously demonstrated the correct method for positioning the cool compresses upon the child's forehead and wrists, areas where the vital bloodstream circulated proximally to the dermal surface. From an alternative earthen container, he precisely dispensed measured quantities of desiccated botanical components, elderflower, strategically employed to stimulate diaphoresis, chamomile, intended to tranquilize the agitated spirit, and a delicate measure of honey to render the inherently bitter decoction palatable to the tender palate of the young patient. The meticulous preparation of this therapeutic concoction evolved into a calming ritual that soothed the mother's anxieties as profoundly as it aided her child. The process of recuperation transpires as much through the cultivation of hope as through the administration of botanical remedies. Asclepius sagaciously observed as they patiently awaited the abatement of the fever. When we empower individuals by demonstrating how they can actively contribute to the healing process, we effectively restore their agency and authority over the encroaching specter of illness. The mother observed, with burgeoning hope, as her child's breathing progressively decelerated and deepened, grasping for the very first time that she was not utterly defenseless in the face of malady. Nevertheless, it is crucial to acknowledge that not every instrument within Asclepius's extensive medical arsenal was inherently characterized by gentleness. When a youthful shepherd presented himself with a profoundly lacerated wound in his lower limb, inflicted by the formidable fangs of a wolf and already exhibiting unmistakable indicators of incipient infection, a more decisive and dramatic therapeutic intervention became unequivocally imperative. The severity of this particular injury demanded a level of surgical dexterity that rigorously challenged and affirmed every principle Chiron had meticulously imparted concerning the intricate, concealed architecture of the human anatomy. From the depths of his capacious satchel, he produced a gleaming collection of bronze instruments, their polished surfaces reflecting the ambient light with the brilliance of imprisoned sunshine. The knives themselves were veritable masterpieces of craftsmanship, their cutting edges sharpened to an unparalleled degree of perfection, and their handles meticulously encased in leather to ensure an unwavering, secure grasp. Yet, Asclepius handled these formidable implements with a solemn reverence befitting tools that possessed the dual capacity to either profoundly heal or grievously harm, contingent entirely upon the consummate skill and judiciousness of their wielder. He meticulously irrigated and purified the grievous wound using wine, elucidating to the shepherd that specific alcoholic essences possessed the inherent capability to combat the unseen microbial adversaries responsible for initiating infection. The young man, enduring the discomfort with clenched teeth, watched as Asclepius painstakingly explored the compromised tissue, meticulously excising foreign debris and devitalized flesh with movements as precise and deliberate as those of a master sculptor meticulously shaping marble. The transient discomfort experienced now serves to avert a far greater agony in the future, the compassionate healer expounded. Occasionally, true benevolence necessitates the infliction of momentary distress to preempt enduring injury. Subsequently, the slender bronze needles were deftly brought into service as Asclepius meticulously closed the gaping wound with sutures so exquisitely neat and uniformly placed that they appeared almost ornamental rather than purely functional. Each individual stitch was executed with an almost mathematical exactitude, drawing the severed margins of torn flesh together into an impeccable and harmonious alignment. The shepherd observed with profound astonishment as his once wide and menacing wound underwent a remarkable metamorphosis, transforming into a clean, linear incision that unequivocally portended healing and restoration, rather than the grim prospect of festering decay. A curious young apprentice once posed a fundamental query to Asclepius, seeking insight into the master healer's uncanny ability to discern the precise points for incision and suture. Asclepius momentarily suspended his meticulous task, allowing the question to resonate before offering a profound observation. Each individual physique narrates its unique saga, he elucidated. The vital currents of the blood reveal their intended pathways. The sinews and musculature indicate their preferred resting positions. My role is merely to attune myself to their inherent pronouncements and facilitate their journey back to a state of complete integrity, guiding them to recall their natural, harmonious configuration. With the passage of several weeks, Asclepius's renown expanded considerably, not solely for his extraordinary capacity to mend the ailing, but equally for his generous spirit in imparting knowledge to others. He diligently instructed the women of the village in the intricate art of concocting potent herbal infusions and poultices designed to alleviate prevalent maladies, such as persistent fevers or nagging digestive complaints. Simultaneously, he guided the younger men through the methodical processes of expertly setting fractured limbs and meticulously cleansing lacerations to prevent infection. In essence, his unassuming satchel of implements transformed into a peripatetic academy of medical science, journeying wherever his healing touch was required. Yet, Asclepius consistently underscored that instruments, no matter how finely crafted, are only as efficacious as the sagacity that governs their application. These ingenious contrivances merely serve to extend the reach of our physical hands, he articulated during a spontaneous discourse held beneath the sprawling, dappled canopy of ancient trees in a bustling market square. However, they possess no power to amplify the empathy within our hearts. It is profound compassion, truly, that functions as the paramount implement, rendering all other instruments genuinely impactful and truly beneficial. A seasoned physician, journeying from the closest urban center, once confronted Asclepius with a pointed inquiry, betraying a hint of professional envy regarding the burgeoning renown of the youthful healer. "To what end do you divulge your carefully guarded practices?" he probed, a subtle challenge in his tone. "Do you not harbor apprehension concerning potential rivalry?" Asclepius, in response, appeared genuinely perplexed by the very premise of the question. The pervasive burden of human suffering is far too immense for the ministrations of any single practitioner to adequately alleviate, he declared with unadorned candor. The greater the multitude of individuals equipped with the sagacity of healing, the more significantly the sum total of anguish across the globe diminishes. This enlightened perspective heralded a profound metamorphosis within the very fabric of medical practice. Diverging sharply from the prevailing custom of jealously safeguarding knowledge as if it were a precious hoard, Asclepius pioneered the establishment of the inaugural collaborative consortium of healers, a collective dedicated to the open exchange of methodologies and groundbreaking discoveries. He meticulously demonstrated to them the craft of fabricating their own essential instruments, guided them to the optimal sources for raw materials, and elucidated which particular techniques proved most efficacious for specific afflictions. In this way, his modest leather satchel, filled with practical wisdom, evolved into a universally adopted archetype, replicated and revered across the entire Hellenic realm. As our exploration of Asclepius's innovative medical methodologies approaches its culmination, one cannot help but apprehend the truly groundbreaking nature of his paradigm. In an epoch where the act of healing was frequently ascribed to mystical forces or direct divine intercession, he steadfastly championed a rational comprehension of the intricate mechanics of the human anatomy. He is credited with conceiving the initial structured methodology for medical practice, establishing the nascent academies of medical philosophy, and forging the pioneering cooperative network of professionally trained practitioners. A poignant illustration of this principle manifested when a gravely afflicted mendicant presented himself, desperately seeking succor that every other healer had resolutely withheld. The man's affliction was in an advanced and agonizing stage, his emaciated frame visibly scarred by years of profound neglect and suffering. Conventional physicians would have summarily dismissed him as beyond remedy, an incurable case. Yet, Asclepius, without hesitation, accessed the contents of his satchel with the identical meticulousness and profound respect he afforded his most affluent clientele. The instruments he deployed were indistinguishable. The very same polished bronze scalpels, the identical meticulously prepared herbal concoctions, the familiar rolls of pristine linen bandages. However, it was the profound solicitude with which he wielded these instruments that fundamentally transmuted both the therapeutic process and the individual undergoing treatment. Even in circumstances where a complete recovery remains elusive, he imparted to his attentive disciples, "We are invariably capable of offering solace. On occasion, that very comfort blossoms into the bedrock for a restorative process that initially appeared utterly unattainable." Nevertheless, and perhaps most profoundly, Asclepius consistently maintained the conviction that the most exquisitely refined instrument within his entire repertoire was, in fact, an inherent benevolence. Each gleaming bronze blade was meticulously maneuvered by an unwavering sense of empathy, every herbal panacea painstakingly formulated with profound affection, and every protective bandage affixed with an abiding sense of optimism. While his physical implements were undeniably unpretentious in their design, the spiritual core that animated their deployment possessed an boundless reservoir of solicitude and unwavering devotion. Thus, we conclude this segment of our narrative, envisioning Asclepius diligently engaged in his vocation within that unassuming village, his well-worn leather satchel lying open at his side, as he ministers to an unceasing procession of individuals seeking alleviation. The profound methodologies of healing, originating from his tender and skilled hands, proliferated outwards with the serene, expansive quality of ripples emanating across a placid body of water, progressively conveying succor and amelioration to distant enclaves of the world, where anguish had previously languished unaddressed and unrequited. However, the practice of restoration and well-being within the ancient epoch encompassed a spectrum far wider than mere corporeal medicaments. As Asclepius's esteemed reputation burgeoned, individuals commenced pilgrimages to him, presenting themselves with afflictions that botanical preparations alone proved utterly incapable of assuaging. It was during this period that his celestial lineage manifested with unparalleled clarity, not through ostentatious or dazzling acts of supernatural intervention, but rather through his profound innate capacity to apprehend the enigmatic nexus between nocturnal visions and the therapeutic process, a connection that would subsequently form the very bedrock of sacred temple medicine. Imagine, if you will, accompanying Asclepius on a compassionate visit to a woman who had been tormented by unyielding, persistent headaches for numerous months. Neither copious draughts of willow bark tea nor repeated applications of mollifying compresses had yielded even a modicum of respite, and the stark desperation was palpably evident in her weary eyes as she recounted countless nights spent restlessly traversing the confines of her humble dwelling, utterly deprived of restorative slumber. Her devoted husband observed her plight with a profound sense of helplessness, acutely aware that his wife's relentless agony had metastasized, becoming the oppressive nucleus around which the entire existence of their household now sorrowfully orbited. "Kindly recount the narratives of your nocturnal visions," Asclepius intoned softly, positioning himself beside her cot with the characteristic, unwavering attentiveness that had become his defining trait. The unconventional nature of his request initially startled her. What conceivable correlation could ephemeral dreams bear to the incessant throbbing within her temples? Yet, an inexplicable solace emanated from his compassionate demeanor, fostering an atmosphere of candid disclosure, and she commenced articulating the peculiar phantasms that encroached upon her consciousness during the fleeting intervals when sheer exhaustion finally overwhelmed her. She vividly described a recurring dreamscape, a cavernous, tenebrous grotto inundated with torrents of surging water, within which she stood, her voice echoing as she desperately cried out for a child she perceived as lost. The plaintive sound reverberated interminably, rebounding off the unyielding stone surfaces that appeared to constrict her with each passing instant. Invariably, she awakened from this harrowing dream with her headache significantly exacerbated, her pulse quickening with an unnamed sorrow. "But I possess no lost offspring," she confided to Asclepius, her voice laced with bewilderment. "My progeny are all mature and thriving. Why then does this particular dream incessantly afflict me?" Asclepius absorbed her narrative with the same profound and meticulous concentration he had once dedicated to Chiron's profound teachings on deciphering the subtle, unspoken cues of the natural world. He possessed an intuitive grasp that dreams frequently communicated through intricate, symbolic language, unveiling profound verities that the waking intellect found itself unable or unwilling to confront directly. Through a series of tender, probing inquiries, he gradually unearthed the memory of a miscarriage she had endured many years prior, a profound bereavement she had interred so deeply within her psyche that her conscious awareness seldom acknowledged its existence. "Your corporeal form retains the memory of what your emotional core endeavors to obliterate," he elucidated with a gentle cadence. "Occasionally, sorrow navigates beneath the surface, much like subterranean currents flowing through hidden caverns, eventually manifesting in unforeseen and unexpected locations." His prescription encompassed not merely botanical remedies for her persistent cephalalgia, but also a meticulously designed ritual of remembrance and mourning for the infant who had never drawn a breath. "Furnish your sorrow with a designated outlet," he proposed sagaciously, "and it may cease to generate discomfort in disparate regions of your being." This insightful methodology progressively solidified into a consistent pattern as Asclepius systematically refined his comprehension of therapeutic intervention through the realm of dreams. He cultivated an extraordinary proficiency in deciphering the enigmatic symbolic lexicon of the somnolent intellect, meticulously interpreting visions that invariably illuminated the concealed origins of various ailments. For instance, A man haunted by recurrent dreams of being submerged and overwhelmed by water often unearthed a deep-seated apprehension regarding the relinquishment of personal agency and command. Similarly, a woman plagued by visions of being relentlessly pursued frequently came to terms with her profound disquietude concerning an unfulfilling marital union. It was repeatedly observed that corporeal manifestations of illness frequently dissipated entirely once long neglected emotional traumas, and psychic wounds finally garnered the requisite acknowledgement and compassionate redress. A natural contemplation arises regarding the genesis of Asclepius's remarkably unconventional approach to the art of healing. The explanation resided partially within his inherent divine patrimony, for it was a well-established belief that deities frequently communicated profound insights through the ethereal medium of dreams and prophetic visions. Predominantly, however, this unique methodology emanated from his profound readiness to lend an attentive ear to dimensions of human experience that other practitioners of medicine habitually disregarded. He astutely observed that his patients frequently alluded to their nocturnal reveries, prompting him to dedicate as earnest and rigorous an examination to these subconscious narratives as he did to their manifest corporeal symptoms. News of the youthful healer, renowned for his capacity to effect cures through the meticulous exegesis of dreams, propagated swiftly, instigating a phenomenon where devout pilgrims embarked upon arduous, specialized journeys solely to solicit his profound assistance. Yet, Asclepius did not confine his practice merely to the analysis of their visions. He proactively instructed them in the esoteric techniques of actively inviting and cultivating their own therapeutic dreams. Slumber functions as a veritable portal, he elucidated to a congregation of individuals seeking healing, assembled within the hallowed tranquility of a grove consecrated with ancient trees. When we endeavor to traverse this threshold, with due reverence and appropriate preparation, we are afforded passage into realms where profound restoration patiently anticipates our arrival. He meticulously demonstrated the intricate regimen for inducing therapeutic sleep, immersing oneself in the refreshing purity of cool spring water, a ritual intended to purify both the physical form and the ethereal spirit. Undertaking a period of fasting designed to quell the incessant clamor of the conscious mind, and igniting particular aromatic herbs, whose fragrant smoke was believed to ascend as supplications to the benevolent deities of healing. This comprehensive preparatory sequence assumed a significance equal to that of the dreams themselves, effectively carving out a sanctified space for the divine to seamlessly integrate into the fabric of everyday existence. Visualize the meticulous tableau as Asclepius undertook the preparation of a dedicated sleeping sanctum for a prosperous merchant whose persistent and agonizing chronic stomach ailments had stubbornly defied the efficacy of every conventional therapeutic approach. The chamber itself, though unadorned, was arranged with an exquisite precision. Freshly laundered linen graced a comfortably appointed bed. The walls were adorned with serene murals depicting tranquil pastoral vistas, and a diminutive altar, meticulously maintained, cradled reverent offerings intended for the benevolent healing deities. A gentle, ethereal melody permeated the air, subtly emanating from adjacent chambers where other patients reposed, immersed in their own journeys of restorative slumber. The nocturnal visions that grace your slumber this evening may well illuminate the precise trajectory towards renewed vitality. Asclepius gently assured the merchant, his voice a soothing presence, as the elongated tendrils of twilight began to stretch across the landscape. Do not attempt to coerce or command these ephemeral apparitions. Instead, permit them to unfold organically, much like migratory birds instinctively returning to their familiar nesting places at dusk. Irrespective of the imagery that manifests, endeavor to commit it to memory with utmost diligence. For even the most perplexing or fragmented dreams frequently conceal the nascent kernels of profound insight. With a thoughtful gesture, he positioned a diminutive parchment scroll and a slender writing reed conveniently beside the sleeping pallet. Acutely aware that the intricate tapestry of dreams often receded swiftly from conscious recollection, unless meticulously transcribed into tangible language. During his therapeutic slumber, the merchant experienced a vivid dream of an opulent banquet, where he found himself seated in solitary splendor at a table groaning under the weight of an extravagant array of rich, tempting delicacies. Yet, despite the abundance, he was utterly incapable of partaking, for his lips were meticulously sealed with an intricate golden thread. With each desperate attempt to sever this shimmering ligature, it paradoxically intensified in thickness and became even more constricting. Upon awakening and recounting this striking vision to Asclepius, the sagacious healer offered a knowing nod of comprehension. Your gastric distress originates from the confinement of your unspoken utterances, Asclepius interpreted with profound insight. What truths have you found yourself incapable of voicing? Through a delicate and extensive dialogue, they gradually unearthed the merchant's long-simmering and profound resentment towards a former business associate who had perfidiously defrauded him years prior, orchestrating a deceitful scheme that had caused significant financial and emotional damage. This unarticulated fury had quite literally been corrosively eroding his internal digestive apparatus, manifesting as tangible physical symptoms born from a potent emotional toxin. Asclepius, therefore, prescribed not merely palliative botanical infusions for the merchant's distressed stomach, but also a carefully structured ritualistic confrontation, empowering the merchant to finally articulate his long-suppressed truth. Occasionally, the journey to true healing demands as much valor as it does medicinal intervention, the healer sagaciously observed. Your dream vividly depicted the golden thread, intrinsically valuable, yet profoundly restrictive. While the pursuit of truth may exact a significant personal toll, the cost of perpetual silence is invariably far greater. As Asclepius's renown for utilizing dream-based remedies expanded, he began to discern consistent patterns within the nocturnal visions experienced by his patients. Specific symbols manifested repeatedly: serpents, signifying profound transformation; water, embodying emotional purification; caverns, denoting hidden realms of knowledge; and arboreal forms, suggesting gradual growth and enduring recovery over time. He diligently commenced the systematic documentation of these recurring dream symbols and their intrinsic meanings, thereby pioneering the very first structured methodology for therapeutic dream interpretation. Yet, the most profound and perplexing dreams were those perceived to emanate directly from the divine pantheon. Patients recounted vivid apparitions of Asclepius himself appearing to them in their slumber, often prescribing precise treatments or enacting miraculous cures that seamlessly translated into their waking realities. These seemingly divine visitations both confounded and humbled the esteemed healer, who struggled to comprehend how his likeness could manifest to individuals while he rested peacefully in his own bed, many miles distant. Perhaps the act of healing itself engenders its own presence, he contemplated aloud to a fellow practitioner who had journeyed to learn his innovative techniques. When we commit ourselves entirely to alleviating suffering, our essence transcends our physical forms. Our unwavering intention to heal takes on an autonomous vitality, reaching out to those who require our aid most desperately. This enigmatic dimension of his practice simultaneously captivated and disquieted him, prompting deep philosophical questions. Where did the boundaries of human skill dissolve, and where did divine intervention unequivocally begin? The ultimate resolution to his profound inquiry emerged from his own dreams, which had progressively intensified in vividness as his healing capabilities blossomed. He envisioned himself standing within an immense, sprawling library, where countless ancient scrolls contained the cumulative medical wisdom of all civilizations and every epoch. A figure he instantly recognized as his divine father, Apollo, materialized, yet not in his customary celestial splendor. Instead, Apollo appeared as a venerable, aged physician, his hands bearing the distinct calluses indicative of a lifetime dedicated to selfless service to others. "You fret over the genesis of your extraordinary gifts," the dream Apollo gently intoned. "But healing itself is the fundamental source. Every single instance you alleviate pain, you draw from the very same inexhaustible wellspring that nourishes all compassion. The gods do not possess healing. Rather, we serve it, precisely as you do." This singularly profound dream finally bestowed upon Asclepius the inner tranquility he had long sought, granting him the crucial understanding that his remarkable abilities flowed from an essence far grander than either mere divine power or mortal expertise alone. Emboldened and enlightened by this newfound comprehension, Asclepius initiated the instruction of other healers in the intricate art of engaging with their patients' nocturnal visions. He meticulously demonstrated effective techniques for cultivating optimal conditions conducive to therapeutic sleep, imparted methods for deciphering prevalent dream symbols, and guided them in assisting patients to discern the intricate connections between their dream narratives and their physical or emotional maladies. Dreams are essentially letters composed by the body to communicate with the soul, he lucidly explained. Our sacred duty is to empower individuals to read and comprehend their own intrinsic messages. This transformative practice disseminated rapidly throughout the Hellenic world, eventually achieving formal institutionalization within the hallowed temples that would perpetually bear Asclepius's revered name. Pilgrims would undertake arduous journeys spanning hundreds of miles to recline in these sacred chambers, where curative dreams were believed to manifest for those who approached with meticulous preparation and an earnest, profound need. Nevertheless, the bedrock for all these widespread practices was firmly established in those formative years, when a young, inquisitive healer first learned to attentively listen to the profound language of sleep. Asclepius intuitively grasped that the dormant mind frequently perceived solutions that eluded conscious awareness, that profound rest in itself could function as a potent form of medicine, and that the path to complete healing sometimes necessitated venturing into metaphorical darkness to ultimately discover illuminating light. While the concept of healing dreams might appear overly mystical for contemporary sensibilities, it remained crucial to recall that modern scientific inquiry had now unequivocally validated what Asclepius instinctively understood millennia ago. Sleep served as the critical period when the body underwent intricate self-repair, when the mind diligently processed emotional wounds and psychological traumas, and when the enigmatic yet undeniable connection between physical and spiritual well-being manifested itself with utmost clarity. As news of Asclepius's extraordinary healing prowess resonated across the breadth of Greece, a truly remarkable phenomenon began to unfold. Communities, inspired by his methods, commenced the construction of sacred sanctuaries specifically dedicated to the healing arts, carefully conceived spaces where the pragmatic medical knowledge acquired from Chiron seamlessly merged with the profound spiritual dimensions of comprehensive recovery. These were not ostentatious monuments erected to human vanity, but rather meticulously designed environments where the weight of suffering could profoundly transform into the uplifting lightness of hope. One might imagine standing on a verdant hillside, gazing down upon the nascent construction of the very first Asclepieion, as these dedicated healing temples would subsequently be known. The chosen location was far from arbitrary. It was strategically situated beside a pristine natural spring whose crystalline waters had been revered as sacred for countless generations, encircled by ancient groves of trees that offered both comforting shade and a rich bounty of potent medicinal herbs. The visionary architects inherently comprehended that the most efficacious healing transpired best in environments where nature itself seemed to softly murmur promises of profound renewal and restoration. One could observe the intricate and thoughtful planning that permeated every single aspect of the sanctuary's comprehensive design. The principal temple ascended in graceful, gentle terraces that meticulously followed the hillside's inherent contours, thereby crafting spaces that felt intrinsically organic and harmonious, rather than arbitrarily imposed. Expansive porticos provided welcome shelter from the sun's intense glare and intermittent rainfall, simultaneously facilitating an unhindered circulation of invigorating, fresh air. Gardens were cultivated with deliberate intent, not merely for their aesthetic charm, but for their inherent therapeutic virtues. Fragrant lavender to gently assuage anxiety, refreshing mint to soothe digestive discomfort, and vibrant roses whose delicate fragrance profoundly uplifted the human spirit. The sleeping chambers, in particular, received exceptional attention, meticulously designed according to the fundamental principles that Asclepius had refined through years of dedicated work with healing dreams. Each individual room was precisely oriented to face the east, strategically positioned to capture the very first light of dawn, thereby assisting patients in a gentle, natural awakening, rather than being abruptly startled from their deep, restorative slumber. The walls were adorned with serene murals depicting peaceful, expansive landscapes, idyllic meadows where sheep grazed quietly beneath the sun, tranquil seashores where gentle waves rhythmically lapped against sandy beaches, and secluded forest clearings where dappled sunlight filtered softly through the ancient, venerable leaves. However, perhaps the most pioneering and truly innovative feature was the distinctive circular edifice situated at the very heart of the sanctuary. Conceived for what we might now term group therapy, this space allowed patients to congregate and openly share their personal narratives, their deepest fears, and their fervent hopes for complete healing. Asclepius possessed a profound understanding of a truth that modern medicine was, centuries later, in the process of rediscovering. That isolation frequently exacerbated illness, whereas the supportive embrace of community could be profoundly therapeutic. Suffering shared is suffering halved, he succinctly explained to the architects as they meticulously planned the circular chamber's acoustics. The ingenious dome ceiling was specifically engineered to carry even whispered words clearly and distinctly to every single listener, thereby fostering a remarkable sense of intimacy within a space capacious enough to comfortably accommodate dozens of individuals. When patients realized they were not alone in their pain and struggles, the healing process often commenced even before any traditional medicine was administered. The inaugural pilgrims arrived while the construction was still very much underway, drawn by compelling reports of miraculous cures and exceptionally compassionate care. They journeyed, burdened by their ailments as if by heavy, cumbersome bundles, some progressing with agonizing, painful steps, others transported on litters by devoted and tireless family members. What struck observers most profoundly about these early patients was their complex mixture of fervent hope and cautious skepticism. They had often sought relief from numerous healers before, and had frequently been disappointed by promises that ultimately proved empty and unfulfilled. Yet something about the Asclepius felt distinctly different from the very moment they passed through its welcoming gates. Perhaps it was the serene efficiency of the priests and attendants who greeted each new arrival with genuine questions about their comfort and well-being, rather than immediate demands for payment. Perhaps it was the sanctuary's pervasive atmosphere of calm, purposeful intent, where every single element, from the strategic placement of benches to the thoughtful selection of plants, seemed meticulously designed to promote profound peace and tranquility, rather than to ostentatiously showcase wealth or grandeur. Asclepius himself moved through the bustling construction site with the grace and precision of a master conductor, orchestrating a complex, harmonious symphony. He consulted closely with the stonemasons about the precise thermal properties of different marble varieties, discerning which types remained refreshingly cool in the intense summer heat, and which retained warmth during the biting winter chills. He engaged in detailed discussions with the gardeners about the seasonal cycles of various medicinal plants, ensuring that a continuous supply of fresh, potent herbs would be readily available throughout the entire year. No detail was deemed too insignificant for his meticulous attention if it held the slightest potential to positively affect a patient's overall well-being. One might naturally ponder how word of the sanctuary's remarkable efficacy spread so widely in an age completely devoid of modern communication technologies. The simple yet profound answer lay within the patients themselves, who, upon their return to their home communities, transformed into fervent ambassadors for Asclepian healing. A successful merchant whose chronic, debilitating joint pain miraculously disappeared after a month-long sojourn at the sanctuary, enthusiastically recounted the extraordinary treatments to everyone he encountered. A devoted mother whose child recovered from a wasting disease organized pilgrimages for other desperate families confronting similar heartbreaking crises. These compelling narratives of success and profound recovery collectively created an expansive network of informal, word-of-mouth advertising that permeated the entire Greek world and extended far beyond its borders. Soon thereafter, urgent requests began to arrive from distant cities, earnestly seeking assistance in establishing their own Asclepius. Asclepius responded by meticulously training dedicated teams of priests and skilled healers who could effectively carry his transformative methods to new and diverse locations. However, he steadfastly insisted that each new sanctuary be thoughtfully adapted to its specific local environment and the unique needs of its particular community. Healing cannot be mass-produced like pottery, he firmly explained to a delegation from Athens who desired to construct an exact, identical copy of the original sanctuary. Each community must embark upon and discover its own distinct path to wellness, just as each individual patient requires tailored, individual treatment. This profound philosophy ensured that while all Asclepius shared certain fundamental principles and core tenets, each developed its own distinctive character, specialized areas of expertise, and unique local charm. The renowned sanctuary located at coastal Epidaurus, for instance, gained widespread fame for its exceptional efficacy in treating various respiratory ailments, ingeniously taking advantage of the invigorating sea breezes that seemed to miraculously clear congested lungs. The venerable mountain temple at Titan, conversely, specialized in mending injuries and setting broken bones, skillfully utilizing the pristine, unpolluted air and mineral-rich springs of higher elevations to significantly accelerate the healing process. The bustling urban sanctuary in Athens focused primarily on ailments of the mind and spirit, catering to a populace often stressed by the relentless pressures of city life and continuous political turmoil. Yet regardless of their individual characteristics, all Asclepius uniformly incorporated certain essential features that profoundly reflected their esteemed founder's deep and comprehensive understanding of how genuine healing truly operated. They were established upon exquisitely chosen locations, which inherently fostered a sense of optimism merely by offering pleasant environments for repose and recuperation. These establishments skillfully merged tangible medical interventions with profound spiritual rejuvenation, acknowledging the intertwined suffering of both body and spirit and the necessity for their concurrent restoration. Crucially, their operational ethos was founded upon the revolutionary tenet that access to healing should be universally available to all individuals, irrespective of their societal standing or financial capacity. Affluent patients were graciously received, and their considerable contributions materially supported the sanctuary's operations. Yet impoverished supplicants were afforded an identical standard of care. This groundbreaking egalitarian methodology perplexed certain observers and provoked the ire of others who customarily profited from the prevailing class distinctions within the medical profession. Does a fractured bone discern whether its possessor is of noble lineage or common birth? Asclepius famously retorted to those detractors who challenged his progressive policies. Does a raging fever differentiate between social strata? Sickness, in its impartial nature, humbles every individual equally. And thus, the opportunity for healing must be equally accessible. This profound philosophical stance ultimately emerged as one of his most enduring legacies in the sphere of medicine. The transformative notion that healthcare constitutes a fundamental human requirement rather than an exclusive privilege reserved for the affluent. As the extensive network of Asclepius expanded across the land, their functions began to transcend mere individual therapeutic interventions. They evolved into pivotal centers for medical instruction, where innovative techniques were meticulously exchanged, rigorously tested, and subsequently refined. These institutions frequently hosted significant convocations where practitioners of healing arts from disparate geographical regions convened to compare clinical observations and glean insights from their collective experiences. Furthermore, They conscientiously maintained extensive repositories of medical manuscripts and vast collections of botanical knowledge, thereby safeguarding invaluable healing wisdom for the edification of successive generations. Moreover, these hallowed sanctuaries gradually exerted a profound influence on the broader cultural understanding of well-being and affliction. In the epochs preceding Asclepius, illness was frequently perceived as a punitive divine decree or an inescapable predetermined destiny. The Asclepia, however, compellingly demonstrated that a multitude of maladies could be averted through judicious dietary practices, regular physical exertion, and prudent lifestyle choices. They assiduously propagated the doctrine that the proactive maintenance of health was as paramount as the curative treatment of disease, thereby introducing nascent concepts of preventive medicine that struck ancient sensibilities as nothing short of revolutionary. One could readily envision the rhythmic cadence of daily existence within a fully developed Asclepion, a gentle yet purposeful hum of activity characterizing spaces where vital work transpired with an absence of theatricality or undue haste. The first light of dawn heralded the resonant chimes of temple bells, summoning patients to participate in morning supplications and beneficial therapeutic exercises. The subsequent hours of the day unfolded through a meticulously planned sequence of prescribed treatments, communal repasts thoughtfully designed to facilitate recovery, instructive sessions where patients acquired the skills to manage their own health, and convivial evening assemblies where narratives were exchanged and interpersonal bonds were forged. The architectural structures themselves appeared to embody the very essence of the healing spirit, their proportions meticulously crafted according to mathematical ratios that engendered a subtle yet pervasive sense of harmony. Sunlight streamed generously through strategically placed windows and skylights, casting dynamic patterns that slowly metamorphosed throughout the day. Water coursed through artfully designed channels and fountains, offering both practical utility and the tranquil, lulling sounds that effectively assuaged troubled and anxious minds. These venerable healing temples remarkably anticipated numerous characteristics of contemporary hospitals and modern treatment facilities. They possessed an inherent understanding of the critical importance of adequate ventilation, abundant natural illumination, and intrinsically peaceful environments. They acutely recognized the profound value of integrating medical interventions with robust emotional succor. They pioneered the synergistic amalgamation of physical and spiritual healing, a holistic approach that modern medicine is only now in the process of rediscovering. Yet perhaps their most enduring and significant innovation was the straightforward acknowledgement that the most efficacious healing invariably transpires within supportive communities of care. Environments where suffering is consistently met with both professional competence and profound compassion, where hope is assiduously cultivated alongside the body's innate capacity for self-restoration. One might vividly imagine traversing the grounds of one of these ancient sanctuaries, experiencing the profound tranquility that emanates from the certain knowledge that, at any given moment, dedicated hands are tirelessly laboring to alleviate discomfort and to reintegrate shattered lives into a state of wholeness. It is natural to ponder how a creature so widely feared came to symbolize the very essence of the healing arts. The enigmatic connection between Asclepius and serpents unveils a profound insight into the Hellenic understanding of medicine as a discipline that necessitates confronting our deepest apprehensions, including our own mortality, and discerning profound wisdom in the most unexpected of guises. Asclepius, in his nascent years, was still diligently exploring the more profound enigmas of healing, extending beyond the foundational knowledge imparted to him by Chiron within the verdant forest. On one occasion, he was summoned to attend to a young child who had suffered a bite from a venomous serpent. Despite his burgeoning reputation as a healer, this particular case instilled a deep sense of trepidation within him. The incident had transpired many hours prior, and the child's delicate physique was already manifesting unmistakable indications of the poison's lethal progression. Visibly swollen tissues, labored and shallow respiration, and a pallid complexion that vividly conveyed the gradual ebbing of life. The distraught family had exhausted every conceivable recourse known to them. They had assiduously applied poultices prescribed by the village's sagacious women, offered fervent supplications at every hallowed shrine in their community, and even sought counsel from an oracle who ominously suggested that only a divine intervention could possibly preserve their daughter's life. When they ultimately conveyed the gravely ill child to Asclepius, their flickering hope was so exceedingly fragile that it appeared poised to shatter at the merest hint of a discouraging prognosis. However, instead of succumbing to despair, Asclepius experienced an unforeseen sensation, a profound and compelling curiosity regarding the very creature that had precipitated this dire crisis. "Kindly indicate the precise location where the serpent inflicted its bite," he requested with calm authority. The child's father guided him to a craggy outcrop where his daughter had been foraging for wild berries. Although the serpent itself had vanished, Asclepius meticulously scrutinized the scene, carefully noting the specific types of vegetation, the proximity of a water source, and the exact spot where the attack had occurred. "What particular species of serpent was it?" he inquired further. The father's detailed description corresponded precisely with Asclepius's growing suspicion. A species renowned for its extremely potent venom, yet also, according to ancient oral traditions, credited with possessing certain medicinal attributes. This inherent contradiction frequently baffled many contemporary healers. Nevertheless, Asclepius had been contemplating the delicate demarcation between a lethal poison and a curative medicine, recalling Chiron's sagacious instruction that the precise dosage often dictates whether a substance inflicts harm or bestows healing. That night, as he maintained a watchful vigil beside the fever-stricken child, Asclepius experienced one of the remarkably vivid dreams that had become increasingly frequent as his innate healing faculties matured and developed. Within this potent vision, he beheld a magnificent serpent intricately coiled around the sturdy trunk of an ancient, venerable tree. The serpent's eyes exuded an aura of profound intelligence rather than malevolence, and when it articulated, its voice resonated with the accumulated wisdom of countless ages. "You harbor fear for that which you fail to comprehend," the dream serpent imparted to him. "However, I am not your adversary. I embody transformation itself. I am the potent force that sheds antiquated skin to reveal the vibrant promise of new life. I am the power that can either extinguish or restore, contingent upon the manner in which I am employed. Learn from my essence, and you shall unravel mysteries that other healers remain incapable of grasping." Upon Asclepius's awakening, the child's raging fever had completely abated. Her breathing had stabilized into a steady rhythm, and a healthy flush of color was gradually returning to her previously pale cheeks. The immediate crisis had undeniably passed, yet the profound message conveyed in the dream continued to resonate deeply within him. Over the ensuing weeks, he embarked upon a meticulous study of serpents, applying the same rigorous and careful attention he had previously dedicated to the investigation of medicinal flora. He unearthed the astonishing realization that serpents themselves possessed remarkable inherent capacities for healing. They demonstrated an extraordinary ability to regenerate damaged tissues, to survive grievous wounds that would prove fatal to other creatures, and remarkably, to somehow neutralize their own potent venom when circumstances demanded. Their astonishing capacity to shed their old skin became a profoundly evocative metaphor for the process of renewal inherent in healing. The casting off of debilitating disease to reveal healthy, rejuvenated tissue beneath. From a more pragmatic standpoint, Asclepius ascertained that snake venom, when meticulously diluted and scrupulously prepared, could indeed function as a remarkably potent therapeutic agent. Minute quantities of this substance were capable of assuaging specific categories of pain, mitigating dangerous swelling, and even effectively treating certain ailments that had stubbornly resisted other conventional remedies. The fundamental secret lay in a precise comprehension of dosage and preparation, skills that necessitated the identical meticulous observation he applied to every facet of the healing discipline. News of his astonishing successes with venom-based medicines disseminated rapidly, and before long, other healers eagerly sought instruction in these inherently perilous yet undeniably effective treatments. Asclepius imparted his knowledge with characteristic prudence, emphasizing that engaging with such potent substances demanded not merely technical proficiency, but also a profound and reverent respect for their inherent power. Approach serpents as you would approach the divine, he sagely advised, with deep reverence, thorough preparation, and the unequivocal understanding that you are contending with forces far greater than your own. However, the profound symbolic significance of serpents ultimately proved even more momentous than their practical medicinal applications. Asclepius gradually came to understand that the serpent epitomized every inherent paradox within the very act of healing itself. It simultaneously embodied both destruction and regeneration, lethal poison and life-saving medicine, primal fear and profound wisdom. Healers, therefore, must cultivate the ability to engage constructively with these inherent contradictions rather than futilely striving to resolve them. The very first serpent took up residence within Asclepius's sanctuary almost entirely by serendipity. A patient, convalescing after a challenging surgical procedure, observed a harmless garden snake basking in the sunlight on a stone wall in close proximity to the healing chambers. Rather than expelling it, Asclepius graciously welcomed its presence as an auspicious omen. Even the serpents seek solace and healing within these walls, he remarked jovially, yet privately. He harbored a deep conviction that a moment of profound significance had just transpired. Other serpents subsequently arrived, drawn perhaps by the sanctuary's pervasive atmosphere of tranquility, or by the abundant presence of small prey that thrived within the meticulously tended gardens. Instead of perceiving them as mere nuisances or potential hazards, Asclepius thoughtfully encouraged their presence, albeit within reasonable and carefully managed confines. Patients, initially apprehensive of the serpents, gradually learned to perceive them as benevolent custodians and silent guardians of the sacred healing process. Esteemed guardians of the recuperative journey. A truly remarkable and recurrent phenomenon began to manifest within the sanctuary walls. Those individuals who successfully confronted and ultimately conquered their innate apprehension of the sacred serpents frequently experienced profound breakthroughs in their personal paths toward wellness. One poignant illustration involved a battle-scarred soldier tormented by persistent nightmares stemming from his wartime experiences, who discovered a profound sense of tranquility and inner peace after observing a serpent meticulously shedding its old skin. In that moment of quiet contemplation, he grasped the profound metaphor that he too possessed the inherent capacity to divest himself of his traumatic past and embrace a new beginning. Another compelling instance involved a woman whose life had been severely constricted by debilitating anxiety concerning her chronic ailment. Her journey toward recovery commenced in earnest after a diminutive garden snake, seemingly imbued with an ancient trust, gently coiled itself around her wrist during a contemplative meditation session within the tranquil grounds. This unexpected, intimate interaction seemed to unlock a crucial psychological barrier, enabling her to begin the difficult process of healing. Serpents are profound instructors in the intricate dance of transformation, Asclepius elucidated to an attentive assembly of esteemed priests and dedicated healers. He continued, "They vividly demonstrate how what might initially appear to be an ending, the methodical sloughing of skin, the profound stillness preceding a decisive strike, even the potent, dangerous venom they possess, can, in fact, be an indispensable component of life's perpetual renewal. True healing, in its deepest essence, frequently necessitates our willingness to relinquish antiquated modes of existence, much as these fascinating creatures shed their outgrown dermal layers." This profound philosophical insight, gleaned from his meticulous observation of the natural world, served as the foundational impetus for the creation of the distinctive staff that would ultimately become Asclepius's most universally recognized emblem. Expertly carved from the resilient wood of an olive tree and gracefully entwined with a meticulously rendered bronze serpent, this iconic artifact elegantly symbolized the harmonious integration of ancient, natural healing wisdom with the inherent, transformative potency that serpents so powerfully embody. The staff transcended mere utility, evolving into both a pragmatic diagnostic instrument and an object of profound spiritual significance, employed with equal reverence to conduct thorough examinations of patients and to channel focused healing energy during intricate therapeutic sessions. The compelling potency of this symbolism resonated so profoundly that numerous other Asclepia, the sister healing sanctuaries across the ancient world, enthusiastically began to incorporate the revered serpents into their own established medical practices. Living snakes were carefully housed in specially constructed, secure chambers where patients could serenely observe their natural behaviors, drawing profound lessons and inspiration from their quiet example. Beyond the living creatures, intricate artistic representations of serpents proliferated throughout the sanctuaries, meticulously carved into enduring stone, vibrantly painted upon sacred walls, and exquisitely wrought in glistening bronze and other precious metals, adorning every available surface. Yet Asclepius, ever the pragmatist, steadfastly ensured that the potent symbolism never overshadowed the tangible, practical realities of working directly with actual serpents. He personally oversaw the rigorous training of specialized keepers, individuals who possessed an intimate understanding of ophidian behavior and who were adept at maintaining these creatures safely and responsibly within the hallowed sanctuary grounds. Furthermore, he meticulously established stringent protocols for the cautious application of venom-based medicines, carefully calibrated to minimize any potential risks, while simultaneously maximizing their profound therapeutic benefits. The romanticized ideal of serpents as benevolent healing creatures was, for Asclepius, always judiciously counterbalanced by a deep, abiding respect for their inherent power and their undeniable potential danger. As Asclepius's esteemed reputation continued to expand and solidify, a growing number of individuals began to recount vivid dreams in which the revered healer appeared, invariably accompanied by his serpentine companions who imparted invaluable healing wisdom. These ethereal visions became so pervasive and widely reported that the distinctive snake-wrapped staff emerged as the god's preeminent symbol, attaining even greater recognition than his human form itself. Patients frequently awoke from these restorative healing dreams with the distinct, comforting sensation of gentle serpents gracefully gliding across their bodies, leaving in their wake palpable trails of soothing warmth and welcome relief precisely where persistent pain had previously resided. The burgeoning medical profession embraced the serpent symbol with resounding enthusiasm, intuitively recognizing that it eloquently encapsulated the fundamental essence of medicine itself. The arduous journey of healing invariably entailed an element of inherent risk. The daunting prospect of inadvertently exacerbating an ailment, the challenging necessity of confronting uncomfortable, often painful truths, and the profound, sometimes unsettling risk of transformative change itself. The serpent served as a potent, constant reminder to healers that they were working with formidable, potent forces that demanded to be approached with an unwavering blend of profound wisdom and humble reverence. Centuries subsequently, as the vast Roman Empire extended its formidable influence and disseminated Asclepian healing practices throughout the entirety of the known world, the potent serpent symbol journeyed synchronously alongside them. Its iconic image began to appear on circulating coins, etched upon specialized medical instruments, and proudly displayed on the prominent signage of healing establishments far and wide. The staff of Asclepius became so inextricably linked with the practice of medicine that its powerful iconography endured the eventual collapse of the classical world, ultimately evolving into the familiar caduceus that continues, even today, to prominently mark medical facilities across the globe. It is worthwhile to reflect upon the profound insights these ancient traditions offer regarding our own contemporary approaches to confronting deeply ingrained fears. Asclepius, through his diligent observation and practice, discerned that actively evading that which instills apprehension within us often serves only to amplify its dominion over our lives. Conversely, he understood that approaching our fears with a measured respect and a genuine desire for understanding possessed the remarkable capacity to transmute them into invaluable reservoirs of wisdom. There exists, perhaps, a salient lesson here for our individual relationships with the inevitabilities of illness and mortality. Much like the serpents that Asclepius meticulously learned to cooperate with, disease and the ultimate cessation of life are not merely adversaries to be relentlessly vanquished, but rather fundamental, natural forces that can impart profound lessons about the intrinsic preciousness of vibrant life and robust health. The healing professions, in their modern incarnation, continue to perpetuate the use of the venerable serpent symbol precisely because it serves as an enduring reminder that the practice of medicine achieves its most profound efficacy when it thoughtfully acknowledges both the inherent dangers and the immense transformative possibilities inextricably woven into the very fabric of the healing process. Water, in its pristine form, has perpetually been revered for its inherent healing capabilities, and it is no coincidence that the sacred sanctuaries of Asclepius were frequently established in close proximity to natural springs. These vital springs yielded mineral-rich waters, capable of alleviating a multitude of ailments that conventional herbal remedies and surgical interventions often proved powerless to address. However, the profound efficacy of the medicine found within these hallowed baths transcended mere physical ablution. It encompassed a deeper, more holistic psychological metamorphosis, a transformation that emerged from the profound experience of ritual purification and the elemental, comforting human sensation of being genuinely cared for and attended to. One might endeavor to vividly imagine the serene experience of approaching the renowned healing springs at Epidaurus in the hushed tranquility of the early morning hours, when a delicate mist gracefully ascended from the warm, inviting water, enveloping the bathing pools in an almost mystical, ethereal atmosphere. These life-giving springs originated from deep, subterranean sources, carrying an intricate tapestry of dissolved minerals that had been painstakingly leached from ancient geological formations during their protracted journey to the Earth's surface. The water, upon tasting, possessed a subtly metallic tang, underscored by faint overtones of sulfur, a testament to the Earth's concealed, potent chemistry. Asclepius, in the course of his extensive early travels, serendipitously discovered these remarkable springs, drawn to their location by compelling reports of their unusual and highly beneficial properties. Local shepherds, for generations, had been keenly aware that their sheep, afflicted with various skin ailments, consistently showed marked improvement after routinely drinking from specific pools. Furthermore, they observed that wounded animals instinctively sought out these very same springs for their restorative qualities. Yet, it was Asclepius alone who possessed the visionary intellect to systematically comprehend and effectively harness the full spectrum of the water's profound healing potential. The subterranean network of springs yielded diverse varieties of water, each originating from distinct underground sources and characterized by its own unique mineral composition and corresponding therapeutic attributes. The hottest springs, their waters naturally superheated by their proximate passage near deep-seated thermal sources, proved exceptionally efficacious in alleviating chronic joint pain and persistent muscle stiffness. Conversely, the cooler springs, abundantly enriched with iron and a myriad of other beneficial minerals, offered significant relief to patients grappling with digestive disturbances and certain types of blood disorders. The coldest springs, almost bracingly icy even amidst the warmth of summer, served to vigorously invigorate systemic circulation and appeared to fortify the body's innate immunological resistance to various maladies. Nevertheless, Asclepius, with his profound intuitive understanding, rapidly recognized that while the discernible physical properties of the water were undeniably significant, they constituted only a partial aspect of their overarching healing power. The very act of bathing itself, the meticulously orchestrated ritual of cleansing, the comforting, enveloping sensation of warm water providing buoyant support to the body, and the temporary, liberating suspension of mundane, everyday anxieties, collectively conspired to cultivate precise psychological conditions that fostered genuine healing in ways that purely pharmacological or surgical treatments simply could not replicate or achieve. He meticulously devised the comprehensive bathing protocols that would subsequently become the standardized practice throughout the entire Asclepian world. Patients did not merely plunge into the springs with the casual abandon of recreational swimmers. Instead, they diligently adhered to carefully conceived sequences of preparation, meticulously designed to prime both the physical body and the receptive mind for the profound healing process that lay ahead. The sacred ritual typically commenced before the first blush of dawn, a time when the springs were perceived to be at their most pristine, and the ambient atmosphere was most profoundly conducive to introspective contemplation and spiritual receptivity. The initial stage involved a meticulous purification, extending beyond mere physical washing to encompass a symbolic cleansing intended to prepare patients for a profound spiritual renewal. They first bathed in ordinary unadorned water, utilizing simple, natural soaps crafted from olive oil and ash to meticulously remove the accumulated dust and perspiration of their arduous travels. This preliminary cleansing served not only practical hygienic purposes, but also played a crucial role in helping patients mentally transition from the mundane concerns of daily existence into the hallowed, sacred space dedicated solely to healing. The approach to the venerated healing springs themselves was steeped in ancient traditions of profound reverence and respect. Patients customarily presented prayers and offered small symbolic sacrifices, such as freshly gathered flowers, polished coins, or deeply personal items that eloquently symbolized their unwavering commitment to the healing journey. They entered the water with deliberate slowness, allowing their bodies to gradually acclimate to the precise temperature and unique mineral composition. Attendants were readily available to gently guide those who required assistance, yet the paramount emphasis remained firmly placed on the individual's personal, introspective experience, rather than on any form of imposed, prescriptive treatment. Water possesses memory. Asclepius frequently imparted to patients as they prepared for their inaugural therapeutic immersion. It retains the echoes of the deep, hidden places it has traversed, the ancient stones it has caressed, and the profound secrets it has absorbed in the enveloping darkness. When you immerse yourself in these springs, you become an intrinsic part of that timeless, ancient memory. Allow the water, in its wisdom, to instruct your body in the forgotten art of being well once more. 3 double quotes. These remarkable healing springs consistently attracted patients suffering from conditions that had stubbornly resisted all other conventional forms of medical intervention. One such individual was a veteran soldier whose joints had become so rigidly stiffened by the lingering effects of old, unhealed wounds that his to walk was severely compromised. Years of arduous military campaigns had etched themselves onto his physique, leaving his body a veritable topographical map of chronic aches and debilitating physical limitations, a burden that no amount of traditional medicine had proven capable of alleviating. The hot springs, with their rich mineral content and deeply penetrating thermal energy, gradually began the arduous process of restoring a measure of flexibility to joints that had long appeared irrevocably frozen in their painful immobility. Yet the soldier's profound healing encompassed far more than mere physical restoration. As he immersed himself in the soothing, warm waters, surrounded by other patients who openly shared similar struggles and silent burdens, he began, tentatively at first, to articulate deeply buried experiences he had never before felt able to discuss with even his closest family or dearest friends. The sacred springs, in their profound tranquility, transformed into an unspoken confessional, a sanctuary where the profound, unseen wounds of war could finally be acknowledged, voiced, and ultimately addressed. His body loosened, not solely due to the therapeutic minerals dissolved in the water, but significantly because his spirit, at long last, found the unspoken permission to release the immense tension and psychological weight it had so stoically carried for what seemed an eternity. In another compelling case, a woman arrived at the sanctuary, desperately seeking respite from a debilitating skin condition that had relentlessly afflicted her since the tender years of her childhood. The incessant itching and persistent inflammation had rendered her profoundly self-conscious and socially withdrawn, severely curtailing her capacity to cultivate meaningful relationships or actively participate in the vibrant life of her community. The individual's ailment severely hindered their ability to forge meaningful relationships or engage fully in the broader tapestry of communal existence. While the therapeutic efficacy of the sulfur-rich springs was undeniable in alleviating her physical manifestations, the true catalyst for her profound transformation emerged from the shared experience of bathing alongside other women. In this unique communal setting, she encountered an acceptance devoid of judgment or revulsion. The very essence of these healing waters served as a powerful challenge to prevailing social norms, yielding immense therapeutic dividends. Within the aqueous embrace, the conventional markers of class, material wealth, and societal standing dissolved into irrelevance. All who entered did so in a state of unadorned vulnerability, united by their intrinsic humanity and a shared yearning for restoration. This enforced parity cultivated unparalleled opportunities for genuine connection and profound understanding, interactions that would remain inaccessible in conventional social environments. Asclepius, with meticulous forethought, engineered the bathing facilities to champion this ethos of democratic healing. The various springs were strategically configured to ensure that patients afflicted with diverse conditions could access the specific waters best suited to their individual needs. Concurrently, expansive common areas were integrated, fostering interaction among all individuals, irrespective of their particular maladies. Surrounding the pools, comfortable seating arrangements were provided, encouraging leisurely conversation and restorative repose. Additionally, carefully cultivated gardens offered private sanctuaries for those desiring solitude, their inherent beauty serving as a potent balm for the spirit. The daily rhythm observed within the springs was thoughtfully harmonized with natural physiological cycles, thereby amplifying the body's innate capacity for self-repair. Dawn immersions capitalized on the body's intrinsic awakening energy, with cooler waters employed to stimulate circulation and prime the system for the day's forthcoming activities. Midday sessions were precisely calibrated for targeted therapeutic interventions, wherein patients spent meticulously prescribed durations in specific waters chosen for their particular ailments. The culmination of the day's hydrotherapy, the evening baths, were designed to induce deep relaxation and prepare the body for truly restorative slumber. Perhaps the most groundbreaking innovation within Asclepian hydrotherapy lay in its profound recognition that diverse patients necessitated distinct methodologies for water-based healing. For some, vigorous aquatic exercise, such as swimming, proved beneficial in strengthening weakened musculature and enhancing cardiovascular vitality. Conversely, others required the gentle buoyancy of floating, which provided crucial support for injured limbs, allowing the body's natural healing processes to unfold unimpeded by stress. Certain individuals thrived on the stimulating properties of mineral-rich waters, while others responded more favorably to pure spring water, which cleansed without overwhelming sensitive constitutions. To address this nuanced spectrum of needs, Asclepius established a rigorous training program for specialized attendants, imbuing them with a comprehensive understanding of both the physical properties inherent in different springs and the intricate emotional requirements of various patient profiles. These adept water healers cultivated an acute sensitivity, learning to decipher the subtle cues indicating optimal mineral absorption, discerning when temperature modifications might yield therapeutic advantages, and instinctively knowing when to foster social engagement, or, conversely, to respect a patient's need for quiet introspection. The practice of water healing is as much an art as it is a science, he elucidated to a gathering of these dedicated attendants during their comprehensive instruction. You are tasked with perceiving not merely the physical needs of the body, but also the profound requirements of the spirit. There are moments when a patient yearns for the solitary embrace of the water. At other times, they seek the solace of companions who truly comprehend their suffering. Your paramount duty is to discern which form of healing the precise moment demands. The remarkable efficacy of these healing springs precipitated their widespread integration into Asclepiae established throughout the Hellenic world. Each sacred sanctuary ingeniously adapted the therapeutic practices to align with its unique local water sources and the specific demographic of its patient population. Mountain-situated temples, for instance, harnessed the extremes of icy streams and naturally occurring hot springs. Coastal sanctuaries innovatively incorporated seawater baths, which offered distinct mineral compositions and the added advantage of rhythmic tidal influences. Urban temples, through ingenious engineering, fashioned artificial springs, channeling water from distant sources and meticulously heating or cooling it as required. This foundational tradition of therapeutic bathing transcended the confines of the healing temples themselves, profoundly shaping the subsequent development of public baths across the entirety of the ancient world. The formidable Roman Empire, in particular, enthusiastically embraced the concept of water-based healing, constructing magnificent and elaborate bath complexes that seamlessly integrated medical treatment with vibrant social interaction. This profound influence permeated through history, extending to the healing baths found within medieval monastery infirmaries and culminating in contemporary spa treatments that continue to invoke the esteemed name and foundational principles of Asclepian hydrotherapy. One might envision the hushed cadence of hallowed water coursing over time-worn stones, metaphorically washing away the day's accumulated tensions and preparing the human spirit for the profound renewal that heralds the dawn. The healing springs of Asclepius serve as a timeless testament, reminding us that occasionally the most unassuming remedies, pristine water, gentle warmth, and dedicated moments for quiet contemplation remain the most potent forms of medicine available to humankind. On frigid mornings, the fingers stubbornly resisted proper articulation. A deep, unyielding ache permeated the joints, a pain that no amount of warmth from the hearth could assuage. Simple, everyday tasks, such as grasping implements or meticulously kneading clay, transmuted into arduous exercises in sheer perseverance. The local physicians proffered a bewildering array of contradictory counsel. One prescribed absolute rest, another vehemently advocated vigorous physical exertion, while a third suggested dietary modifications that appeared entirely unrelated to the presented condition. These renowned healing springs had, over centuries, meticulously prepared countless pilgrims for the more profound and esoteric mysteries of Asclepian medicine. To truly comprehend the subtle, quiet miracles wrought within these ancient sanctuaries, one first needed to intimately understand the arduous and transformative journey of a pilgrim. Their quest was not for instantaneous, dramatic cures, but rather for the gradual, profound transformation that arises from patient, dedicated participation in a collective experience far grander than individual suffering. Consider, for instance, Lysander, a venerable potter from Corinth, whose hands had tragically succumbed to a painful stiffness, a condition that imperiled not only his very livelihood, but also the core of his identity. For 3 decades, he had masterfully molded clay into exquisite vessels, gracing the opulent homes of the wealthy and the humble kitchens of the common folk alike. His hands possessed an intimate knowledge of the rich earth, the precise tactile pressure necessary to raise delicate walls without collapse, and the gentle, artful touch required to fashion lips and handles that delighted both the eye and the hand. The momentous decision to seek solace and succor at the nearest Asclepieion did not come without considerable internal struggle. The journey itself would demand 3 days' travel in each direction, a substantial period away from his work that he could scarcely afford. Furthermore, the temple's customary requirement for donations presented a financial burden he was uncertain he could manage. Most daunting of all, the very act of seeking divine healing felt like a stark admission of personal failure, an acknowledgement that his own efforts had proved insufficient, and that he required assistance beyond the scope of mere human skill. More significantly, this arduous journey afforded an invaluable period for profound reflection, a sanctuary from the relentless daily pressures of professional obligations and familial responsibilities. For the first time in many months, Lysander found himself liberated to contemplate his debilitating condition without the concurrent anxieties of unfinished commissions, potentially disappointed clientele, or the myriad household necessities that depended entirely upon his earnings. This newfound mental expanse proved to be an absolutely crucial precursor for the healing process that awaited him. Yet ultimately, sheer desperation eclipsed his personal pride, and Lysander found himself traversing the dusty thoroughfare toward the revered sanctuary, his modest pack containing humble offerings and sufficient provisions for several days' stay. The journey itself imperceptibly initiated a part of the healing process, though he remained unaware of it initially. The sustained act of walking compelled him to move his painful hands and arms in novel ways, thereby stimulating blood flow through his stiffened joints and gradually loosening the constricted tissues that had tightened from prolonged disuse. The Asclepieion gradually materialized as Lysander crested a gentle hill on the 3rd day of his arduous travels. Below him lay an expansive complex of meticulously arranged buildings, harmoniously integrated around natural springs and hallowed groves of sacred trees. The architectural aesthetic conveyed an overarching sense of permanence and profound serenity rather than ostentatious grandeur. Structures of aged stone weathered to a soft, inviting gray. Courtyards paved with smooth, resilient stones, polished by the passage of countless pilgrims' feet, and meticulously tended gardens where a rich variety of medicinal plants flourished in carefully designated plots. His initial encounter upon arrival was with a temple attendant, a figure who greeted new arrivals at the sanctuary's principal entrance. This individual was not a priest performing an elaborate religious ceremony, but rather someone akin to a medical administrator, whose primary role was to gather practical and pertinent information regarding his condition. "How long have you been suffering from this affliction?" she inquired, meticulously inscribing notes onto a wax tablet. "What specific treatments have you attempted thus far? Do you possess any familial history of similar medical problems?" The thoroughness and pragmatic focus of these questions genuinely surprised Lysander. The entire interaction felt more akin to a consultation with a seasoned physician than an approach to a divine entity. Though, within the Asclepian framework, these two activities proved to be intrinsically intertwined and not mutually exclusive, the attendant proceeded to explain the sanctuary's established routine with the unruffled, matter-of-fact efficiency of an individual who had successfully guided thousands of pilgrims through this identical process. "Initially, you will undergo a purifying immersion in the sacred springs," she clarified, gesturing toward a nearby edifice from which plumes of steam ascended into the crisp morning air. "Subsequently, you will present your offering at Asclepius's venerable altar and dedicate time to preparation for the pivotal healing sleep." She further elucidated that the god communicates with different individuals in myriad ways, but the preparatory rituals are specifically designed to ensure one's optimal readiness to receive whatever divine guidance he may choose to impart. However, the tangible physical improvements paled in comparison to the profound psychological impact of being cared for with such meticulous attention and expert skill. For the first time since the onset of his debilitating condition, Lysander experienced the overwhelming sensation that someone truly understood the depths of his suffering. The attendants, through years of dedicated service, had encountered hundreds of cases precisely like his. They possessed an intimate knowledge of which specific movements exacerbated pain, which postures offered genuine relief, and precisely how to manipulate affected joints without inadvertently causing additional discomfort. The bathing ritual, to Lysander's surprise, proved to be far more intricate and elaborate than he had initially anticipated. Attendants, with gentle expertise, guided him through a sequence of pools maintained at distinct temperatures, meticulously explaining the specific therapeutic attributes of each. The cool water, they elucidated, is instrumental in reducing inflammation, while conversely, warm baths are designed to relax musculature and enhance circulatory flow. Between these hydrotherapeutic immersions, they carefully applied specialized oils infused with potent herbs specifically formulated to address his particular condition, preparations emanating fragrant essences of pine, mint, and other unidentified yet soothing botanicals. "Your hands narrate a profound chronicle," remarks a skilled bath attendant as she meticulously massages fragrant therapeutic oils into the pilgrim's rigid digits. For countless years, they have toiled assiduously, sculpting exquisite beauty from pliant clay. Now, a different kind of endeavor awaits them. The arduous yet essential task of self-restoration. Her discerning commentary introduces an entirely novel perspective, suggesting that true convalescence might necessitate more than mere symptomatic relief. It could demand a fundamental reevaluation and transformation of the individual's intimate relationship with their cherished craft. Asclepius, the divine healer, bestows his remedies through myriad channels. The officiating priest elucidates, carefully placing the pilgrim's handcrafted vows amidst a collection of other reverent offerings upon the sacred altar. At times, succor arrives through the enigmatic tapestry of dreams. On other occasions, it manifests through the potent medicaments we administer, and frequently, it emerges from significant alterations in one's daily existence and professional routines. Cultivate an open spirit, prepared to embrace assistance in whatever guise it may present itself. This sagacious counsel, initially perceived as straightforward, ultimately reveals itself to possess a far deeper and more transformative resonance than first apprehended. The solemn offering ritual unfolds in the waning hours of the afternoon, as the sun's oblique rays transmute the temple's majestic marble columns into pillars of resplendent gold. The pilgrim presents their heartfelt tributes, a delicate vase fashioned during more auspicious times, a modest collection of coins, and a meticulously inscribed supplication articulating their earnest aspirations for recovery. The venerable priest, entrusted with receiving these devotional gifts, treats each item with unfeigned veneration, recognizing them not as transactional payments for services rendered, but as profound, tangible expressions of the pilgrim's unwavering faith in the overarching healing continuum. The pilgrim finds a seat beside a woman whose persistent, debilitating headaches have compelled her pilgrimage from the distant metropolis of Athens, and directly opposite a youthful man whose grievous war wounds stubbornly resist proper cicatrization. While their specific afflictions diverge considerably from the pilgrim's own, their shared odyssey of seeking therapeutic intervention, encompassing the intricate interplay of fervent hope and profound desperation, coupled with a burgeoning willingness to embrace approaches they once might have summarily dismissed, perfectly mirrors the pilgrim's personal, evolving journey. The evening repast, thoughtfully prepared and served to the assembled pilgrims, meticulously interweaves essential nourishment with deliberate therapeutic intent. The culinary offerings are unpretentious, yet judiciously selected. Fish abundantly rich in beneficial oils known for their anti-inflammatory properties, a vibrant assortment of vegetables chosen for their intrinsic curative attributes, and wholesome bread crafted from grains that impart sustained vitality without inducing digestive discomfort. Even more significantly, the convivial atmosphere of communal dining fosters invaluable opportunities to connect with other seekers, whose diverse narratives provide both profound solace and illuminating instruction. "I have sojourned here on 3 distinct occasions," confides an elderly merchant, whose chronic gastric ailments have plagued him for countless years. "My inaugural visit brought relief to my physical body. The subsequent visit deepened my comprehension of my condition. This current sojourn, however, focuses on cultivating acceptance for those aspects that defy alteration, while simultaneously striving to ameliorate what remains within the realm of possibility." His insightful words powerfully suggest that the process of healing extends far beyond mere corporeal improvement, encompassing a profound internal transformation in one's relationship with illness and inherent human limitations. The very architecture of the sleeping chamber itself plays an integral role in facilitating the healing process through its meticulous and purposeful design. The room strikes a delicate balance, being neither ostentatiously luxurious nor starkly austere, but rather perfectly calibrated to foster profound rest and conducive, receptive dreaming. Soft, yielding bedding cradles the body without generating pressure points that might disrupt the delicate fabric of sleep. Gentle, regulated ventilation introduces fresh air without creating intrusive drafts. Subtle, ambient lighting permits nocturnal movement without the jarring intrusion of harsh brightness, and the perpetual, soothing murmur of flowing water establishes a natural rhythmic cadence that profoundly encourages deep, restorative slumber. Eschew the pursuit of unattainable remedies, advises the priest who presides over the evening's reflective session. Instead, cultivate a profound quest for understanding. What hidden lessons does your current condition endeavor to impart to you? How might you forge a collaborative alliance with your limitations, rather than merely engaging in a futile struggle against them? What specific modifications within your daily existence might genuinely support your journey toward healing? These penetrating inquiries deftly redirect the pilgrim's focus, shifting it from a yearning for magical intervention to a contemplative embrace of profound self-wisdom. The meticulous preparation for the therapeutic sleep commences after the evening meal, involving detailed instruction and specialized techniques designed to encourage meaningful and insightful dreams. This process is emphatically not a mystical ritual, but rather a pragmatic regimen grounded in centuries of careful observation regarding the optimal conditions that promote the most therapeutically beneficial visions. Pilgrims are guided through specific breathing exercises intended to calm agitated thoughts, instructed in meditation techniques engineered to quiet incessant mental chatter, and taught precise methods for framing questions that empower the unconscious mind to process complex problems during the restorative hours of sleep. The ensuing days unfold as a harmonious blend of practical physical treatment and profound spiritual introspection. Morning exercises, meticulously tailored to the pilgrim's specific condition, aid in preserving flexibility while simultaneously cultivating strength and providing essential support to the musculature. These movements are characterized by their gentle yet purposeful execution, resembling a graceful dance more than a clinical prescription. Afternoon sessions are dedicated to the acquisition of novel techniques for working with clay, specifically adapted to accommodate the pilgrim's altered physical capabilities, thereby fostering a collaborative approach rather than a confrontational struggle against limitations. The first night in the sacred precinct brings forth dreams, though not the dramatic, overt, divine visitation the pilgrim had perhaps subconsciously anticipated. Instead, the nocturnal vision transports them to their workshop, not the constricted, stress-laden space it has recently become, but rather the serene sanctuary it represented in earlier years when they first achieved mastery of their craft. Within the dream's vivid tapestry, their hands move with an exquisite, fluid grace, shaping the clay into forms that seem to emerge organically, as if spontaneously manifesting from the very essence of the earth itself. Upon awakening, the pilgrim recounts the dream's intricate details to one of the sanctuary's erudite priests, who then assists in exploring its manifold potential meanings. Perhaps Asclepius is tenderly reminding you of the profound joy you once discovered in your creative endeavors, he sagaciously suggests. True healing, therefore, might encompass not merely the physical restoration of your hands, but also the rediscovery of that peaceful, focused state of mind that underpinned your most exceptional craftsmanship. Yet perhaps the most profoundly transformative dimension of the pilgrim's sojourn emerges through the diligent observation of their fellow seekers as they navigate their individual healing processes. They bear witness to moments of sudden breakthrough and periods of disheartening discouragement, to dramatic, visible improvements, and to subtle, incremental shifts that, over time, coalesce into significant, enduring change. Most crucially, they come to understand that the trajectory of healing seldom aligns with anyone's initial preconceived expectations, but frequently surpasses them in unforeseen and remarkably beneficial ways. Your hands possess an inherent wisdom you have yet to fully acknowledge, explains the venerable master potter, who specializes in imparting adaptive techniques to pilgrims grappling with similar physical conditions. They intuitively comprehend what the clay demands. Place your trust in that innate knowledge, even when the movements feel distinctly different from what they once were. He meticulously demonstrates innovative methods for holding tools that effectively mitigate strain, positions that ensure a more equitable distribution of pressure, and rhythmic work patterns that strategically incorporate restorative pauses before the onset of debilitating fatigue. A farmer, for instance, learns to skillfully manage chronic back pain not by striving for its complete eradication, but by meticulously developing work rhythms that proactively avert painful flare-ups. A soldier discovers that his indelible battle scars, rather than being mere marks of trauma, actually embody profound wisdom about survival and courage, enabling him to sagely guide younger men away from avoidable perils. A merchant discerns that her persistent anxiety, when subjected to proper understanding and recontextualization, paradoxically furnishes her with invaluable insights into market fluctuations that other traders consistently overlook. The pilgrim's personal healing trajectory mirrors this pattern of gradual revelation rather than sudden miraculous cure. By the culmination of their stay, while their hands have not fully regained their youthful flexibility, they have undeniably mastered novel methods of working that effectively diminish pain while preserving their artistic skill. More significantly, they have cultivated an entirely different relationship with their condition, perceiving it not as an insurmountable limitation, but rather as an unexpected invitation to pursue a deeper, more nuanced mastery of their craft, and indeed, of themselves. The concluding ceremony, performed prior to departure, involves the creation of a votive offering meticulously designed to encapsulate the pilgrim's transformative experience at the sanctuary. In stark contrast to the hopeful supplications brought upon arrival, this newly inscribed tablet records profound gratitude for specific, tangible insights and discernible improvements. I arrived seeking the restoration of my former abilities, the pilgrim pens with quiet conviction. I depart endowed with superior ones. As the pilgrim commences their journey away from the hallowed Asclepius, retracing the familiar path that led them to this sacred place mere days earlier, they carry with them far more than a mere collection of practical techniques for managing their physical condition. They have profoundly experienced a holistic model for confronting life's inherent difficulties, a paradigm that seamlessly integrates rational, evidence-based treatment with profound spiritual openness, individual diligent effort with nurturing community support, and a balanced acceptance of limitations with an unwavering, persistent commitment to continuous improvement. The return journey provides an invaluable interlude for the pilgrim to thoroughly integrate these newly acquired insights into the fabric of their daily existence. They diligently practice the therapeutic exercises learned at the sanctuary, enthusiastically experiment with the innovative techniques for working with clay, and progressively implement thoughtful adjustments in their workshop routines that are designed to support long-term health and sustainable well-being, rather than merely chasing short-term productivity. The profound process of healing, therefore, continues actively within their own home. Now, they possess the essential knowledge and empowered agency to participate in it proactively. Perhaps the most remarkable and understated aspect of the pilgrim's entire pilgrimage experience is its profound sense of ordinariness. Despite unfolding within a sacred setting explicitly dedicated to divine healing, the genuine miracle was not a dramatic, instantaneous intervention, but rather a gradual, patient transformation achieved through meticulous attention to the entirety of the individual. Body, mind, and spirit interwoven. This enlightened approach to holistic healing, originally pioneered within Asclepius's venerable sanctuaries, continues to exert a pervasive influence on contemporary therapeutic practices in ways both overtly recognized and subtly ingrained. As one follows the pilgrim's poignant narrative, from the depths of suffering, through the earnest quest for relief, to the gradual unfolding of healing, it becomes evident how the sanctuary's philosophy judiciously honors both human agency and divine assistance. The benevolent deities provide essential wisdom and opportune pathways, yet it remains incumbent upon the pilgrims themselves to undertake the diligent, daily labor of applying these profound insights to the practicalities of actual life. Healing in this context blossoms into a collaborative synergy between earthly human effort and celestial grace. Neither element, when isolated, proves sufficient, but together they coalesce to achieve a transformative power that neither could realize independently. Envision oneself traversing the ancient ruins of Epidaurus, the most celebrated of all Asclepian sanctuaries, where countless such votive tablets once adorned the hallowed temple walls. The relentless march of time and the covetous hands of treasure hunters have claimed the vast majority. Yet a precious few have endured, offering us tantalizing glimpses into the lives of individuals who discovered within these sacred confines something unattainable elsewhere. Not merely physical restoration, but a profound revitalization of hope and a renewed sense of purpose that rendered life profoundly worth living once more. The profound, yet often subtle personal renewal experienced by innumerable supplicants, akin to Lysander's own journey, found its most eloquent expression in the stone tablets that appreciative individuals bequeathed to the sacred precincts of Asclepius. These ancient carvings, their surfaces softened and polished by innumerable seasons and the respectful caress of devoted hands, served as more than mere records of individual recovery. They collectively bore witness to the sophisticated modus operandi of archaic healing practices, a system that achieved its remarkable efficacy through a blend of patient endurance, profound insight, and a meticulous, all-encompassing consideration of the individual's complete well-being. Intriguingly, the very physical composition of these commemorative tablets offered as much insight into the methods of ancient healing as the narratives meticulously inscribed upon them. Crafted predominantly from indigenous stone, luxurious marble being utilized only when patrons possessed ample means, though humble limestone or even perishable wood, long since disintegrated, were far more common. These artifacts demonstrated the accessibility of the practice. The artistry of the inscriptions themselves varied immensely, spanning from intricate, polished literary works commissioned from expert scribes to unadorned, sincere declarations etched directly by the patients, employing whatever rudimentary carving abilities they possessed. One particularly poignant example recounted the tale of Ambrosia of Athens, whose eyes had been blinded by cataracts. Upon seeking repose within the sacred confines of the sanctuary, she experienced a profound vision. In this divine encounter, it appeared to her that the deity himself drew near, gently parting her eyelids with his fingers. Miraculously, with the advent of dawn, her sight was fully restored. This specific inscription, laboriously reassembled from scattered fragments, stood as a quintessential representation among hundreds of comparable accounts of recovery, underscoring a therapeutic approach that seamlessly integrated tangible medical interventions with mystical components that often resisted straightforward rationalization. A separate tablet chronicled the remarkable experience of Aristo of Troezen, who had endured a state of apparent pregnancy for an astonishing 5 years without ever delivering a child. Following her restful night in the hallowed sanctuary, she recounted a dream where a sacred serpent made contact with her abdomen, and, remarkably, within a year, she gave birth to a son. Contemporary medical understanding posited that such a scenario likely involved either a form of pseudocyesis, commonly known as false pregnancy, or a complex gynecological ailment, both of which could have responded favorably to the comprehensive blend of physical therapies and profound psychological reassurance inherent in the sanctuary's all-encompassing, holistic model of care. One might readily discern the fundamental divergence between these venerable medical accounts and their contemporary counterparts, their distinctive fusion of precise clinical observation with profound spiritual exegesis. The narrative detailing Ambrosia's successful cataract surgery, for it was highly probable that a bona fide surgical procedure transpired, albeit recounted through the evocative lexicon of mythology, incorporated specific elements indicative of authentic medical treatment, all while meticulously preserving the respectful and devout tone befitting a context of sacred restoration. The narrative of Hermodocos of Lampsacus, who was afflicted by paralysis of the body, provided another compelling illustration. It recounted that after he sought slumber within the sanctuary, the deity bestowed healing upon him, subsequently enjoining him to present the most colossal stone he could possibly transport to the temple as a gesture of gratitude. The man, now invigorated, successfully conveyed this immense stone, which remained visible today before the sacred edifice. This prodigious block, a formidable challenge even for an unailing individual to displace, stood as an enduring physical testament to a healing process that not only reinstated lost mobility, but also profoundly revitalized both physical vigor and self-assurance. These ancient inscriptions collectively unveiled a crucial insight. Asclepian healing operated with equal potency through profound psychological transformation as it did through direct physical intervention. Numerous tablets detailed ailments that, in contemporary medical parlance, would be classified as psychosomatic, genuine physiological manifestations stemming from underlying emotional or spiritual turmoil, issues that proved recalcitrant to resolution by conventional medical practices alone. The sanctuary's integrated methodology, which meticulously addressed the body, mind, and spirit in concert, frequently yielded extraordinary outcomes in situations that utterly perplexed practitioners relying solely on physical medicine. Nevertheless, not every inscription recounted extraordinary, instantaneous recoveries. A significant number documented more nuanced, yet equally life-altering, personal metamorphoses. Consider the narrative of Gorgias the potter, who arrived with hands so severely stiffened they rendered him incapable of manipulating clay. Through the benevolent guidance attributed to the deity, he discovered innovative techniques for crafting pottery, methods that respectfully acknowledged both his physical constraints and his inherent artistic talent. He departed, expressing profound gratitude not for the restoration of his former dexterity, but for the profound wisdom to skillfully utilize the capabilities he currently possessed. Furthermore, these historical tablets furnished compelling indications of the sanctuary's remarkably refined comprehension of what contemporary science termed the placebo effect. The inherent restorative potency of anticipation and optimism, particularly when fostered by authentic compassion and diligent oversight. The account of strata of Phaia, afflicted by parasitic worms, who after sleeping in the sanctuary, dreamt that the god's divine offspring meticulously extracted the creatures from her abdomen, illustrated this. Upon awakening, she discovered herself wholly restored. This depiction strongly implied a sophisticated regimen for treating parasitic infestations, presented in a lexicon that respectfully acknowledged both the efficacy of medical intervention and the perceived benevolence of divine aid. One could readily envision these engraved narratives being perused by newly arrived supplicants at the sanctuary, individuals gravely ailing and desperately seeking affirmation that their arduous pilgrimage was not undertaken without purpose. The tablets therefore functioned dually, serving both as invaluable historical medical records and as profound sources of encouragement, demonstrating conclusively that others, afflicted by comparable conditions, had indeed discovered solace and recovery within these hallowed grounds. This intrinsic role transformed the inscriptions into therapeutic instruments in their own right, instilling a sense of optimism that empowered patients to engage more actively and comprehensively in their personal journey toward wellness. Indeed, these less dramatic, more understated accounts may offer a more profound insight into the authentic essence of Asclepian healing than the sensational, miraculous recoveries that so captivated the ancient populace. The sanctuary's enlightened methodology acknowledged that genuine healing did not invariably equate to a complete reversion to prior states of robust health, but frequently involved the profound discovery of strategies to live a rich and meaningful existence despite enduring limitations. This compassionate philosophy extended a vital lifeline of hope to those patients whose ailments defied total eradication, yet whose lives could still be managed with profound dignity and renewed direction. Certain inscriptions further illuminated the sanctuary's remarkable readiness to undertake therapeutic interventions for maladies that other medical practitioners had unequivocally deemed incurable. The poignant story of Alus, who arrived blind and solitary, guided solely by his loyal canine companion, epitomized this. The deity, it was recorded, restored his vision, and he subsequently departed with profound elation, no longer reliant on his devoted animal's direction. The straightforward, unembellished tone of this account implied that addressing blindness, though undoubtedly a formidable challenge, was not perceived as an insurmountable obstacle within the renowned healing center of Epidaurus. The sheer heterogeneity of afflictions meticulously catalogued within the tablets powerfully underscored the expansive, all-encompassing reach of Asclepian medical practice. From fractured bones and festering lesions to persistent chronic discomfort, profound mental disturbances, issues of procreative capacity, and enigmatic maladies that eluded conventional categorization, every conceivable form of suffering found solace and potential remedy within these sacred havens. This remarkable breadth of application strongly indicated a medical philosophy that regarded every manifestation of human distress as inherently deserving of diligent scrutiny and the prospect of restorative intervention. The moving account of Pandora of Thessaly, who presented her daughter, a child who had remained mute since early childhood, offered further evidence. After merely 3 nights spent within the sanctuary, the child uttered sounds in her sleep, and from that pivotal day onward, she regained the capacity for normal speech. Such instances strongly intimated the sanctuary's remarkably advanced grasp of psychological trauma and its physiological expressions, employing therapeutic methodologies that bore a striking resemblance to approaches commonly utilized in contemporary psychological counseling. Furthermore, substantial archaeological findings indicated that a considerable number of patients resided within these sanctuaries for prolonged durations, thereby fostering ephemeral yet deeply connected communities of individuals bound by their common quest for restoration. The inscriptions occasionally alluded to these significant interpersonal bonds. For example, Theano of Enia extends her gratitude not solely to the divine, but also to her fellow pilgrims, whose shared companionship rendered the arduous and protracted path toward wellness significantly more tolerable. The inherent therapeutic efficacy derived from communal experience with others confronting analogous adversities evidently introduced an additional, crucial layer to the overarching healing paradigm. Moreover, these venerable inscriptions unequivocally demonstrated the profoundly egalitarian character of Asclepian healing. Individuals from all strata of society, the affluent and the impoverished, the enslaved and the liberated, the foreign-born and the native citizen, uniformly bequeathed their heartfelt testimonials of gratitude. A particularly striking account told of Nicariba, a slave woman from Mycen, who dreamt that the deity excised a growth from her neck. Her mistress, witnessing the miraculous recovery, promptly granted her freedom and subsequently consecrated this very tablet. Such instances illustrated how healing, within this sacred context, surmounted societal stratifications in a manner rarely accomplished by other ancient institutions. Arguably, the most profoundly affecting of these inscriptions were those that chronicled not merely corporeal restoration, but also deep spiritual metamorphosis. The lamentable arrival of Antiphanes, consumed by despair after plague had claimed his kin and drought had withered his lands, served as a powerful example. He discovered within these sacred confines not a miraculous restitution of his losses, but rather the formidable inner fortitude to forge a new existence from the remnants of his former life. Such heartfelt testimonies strongly suggested that the sanctuaries functioned as rudimentary counseling centers, where individuals could engage in the vital process of confronting and integrating profound grief and trauma, thereby enabling them to persist in life with renewed meaning and deliberate intention. A subset of the tablets meticulously recorded instances where the path to recovery necessitated numerous visits spanning several years. The case of Aristion of Halai, who made his 3rd pilgrimage, exemplified this. Each subsequent visit progressively deepened his comprehension of his ailment and honed his proficiency in its management. He consecrated this tablet not to commemorate a completed cure, but rather to honor a journey of wellness that had been auspiciously initiated. These particular inscriptions thus disclosed a remarkably pragmatic perspective on healing, perceiving it as a continuous, evolving process rather than a singular, climactic occurrence. The linguistic style employed within these inscriptions frequently mirrored the authentic cadences of the patient's personal narratives, rather than adhering to rigid, formalized religious lexicon. I arrived here clinging precariously to life and depart prepared to embrace existence anew, proclaimed one profoundly appreciative supplicant. The unadorned clarity and forthrightness embedded in such declarations conveyed a far greater sense of conviction than any convoluted theological exposition could possibly engender. These individuals were not articulating abstract doctrinal tenets, but rather testifying to tangible, transformative shifts within the fabric of their everyday lives. Contemporary academics, meticulously examining the extant inscriptions, have discerned discernible patterns indicative of standardized therapeutic methodologies tailored to distinct categories of ailments. For instance, dream incubation and interpretation were prominently utilized for psychological disturbances, while direct surgical intervention was reserved for acute physical injuries. Adjustments to diet and daily routines were prescribed for persistent chronic conditions, and spiritual guidance was offered for profound existential dilemmas. The aggregate evidence from these tablets thus unveiled a remarkably sophisticated medical infrastructure, adept at aligning specialized treatments with precise individual requirements, rather than resorting to simplistic, universally applied remedies. The ancient healing institution deliberately steered clear of presenting universal, undifferentiated remedies to its diverse clientele. Instead of proposing generic panaceas, its therapeutic philosophy embraced a nuanced understanding that individual experiences of suffering necessitated highly personalized and adaptable interventions, moving beyond the limitations of standardized approaches. Consider the poignant case of Euphrates the soldier, who once perceived his battle scars as stigmatizing emblems of a profound lack of valor. Within these sacred confines, he was taught a profound new truth. These very wounds were, in fact, undeniable testaments to his bravery and resilience. His restoration commenced not with the regeneration of tissue, but with a recalibrated perspective and a renewed sense of self-worth. Such illuminating inscriptions reveal the sanctuary's sophisticated methodology for addressing psychological distress, a foresight that remarkably foreshadows contemporary insights into how the construction of narrative profoundly shapes recuperation from both corporeal and emotional wounds. Of particular note, some of these venerable inscriptions document extraordinary instances where patients obtained therapeutic benefits not for their own personal ailments, but on behalf of cherished family members who were unable to undertake the arduous pilgrimage. Xenophon, for example, experienced visionary guidance regarding therapy for his son's congenital lameness during a sacred dream. Upon journeying back to his home, he diligently implemented what the divine entity had revealed to him, and the youngster subsequently regained full ambulatory function. These compelling accounts imply an advanced comprehension of how healing knowledge could be effectively conveyed and put into practice far beyond the sacred precinct's geographical confines. Furthermore, the tablets meticulously safeguard the testimony regarding the sanctuary's crucial pedagogical role. Many appreciative individuals chronicled not merely their own successful recoveries, but also the invaluable insights acquired that subsequently assisted them in providing care for family members and neighbors. Katie the midwife, a notable example, learned here specialized techniques for challenging parturition that have, since her return, averted innumerable maternal and infant fatalities within her city. In essence, these sanctuaries functioned as rudimentary medical schools, where empirical understanding was disseminated openly and freely among those who were equipped to deploy it for the broader benefit of their communities. As the relentless forces of weather and the inexorable march of time have eroded and degraded the majority of these lithic chronicles, we possess only vestiges, fragments that intimately suggest the existence of thousands of individual narratives. These tales speak of anguish transmuted into optimism, of physical constraints transcended by acquiescence, and of existences revitalized through the diligent synthesis of mortal expertise and celestial benevolence. The enduring inscriptions serve as a poignant reminder that underlying each therapeutic breakthrough lie myriad personal stories of people who ventured to trust that their distress held significance and that recuperation was indeed attainable. Tonight, as one reposes in the tranquil obscurity, one might envision these venerable utterances resonating through the annals of time. Not solely the spectacular recoveries that garnered widespread notice, but also the more modest triumphs that rendered quotidian existence tolerable once more. Perhaps the most profound restoration documented in these tablets is the resurrection of optimism inherently. The profound revelation that even amidst the most profound infirmity, the potential for metamorphosis persistently remains. Our exploration of the biography and enduring influence of Asclepius culminates in our arrival at that enigmatic juncture when the human physician surpasses his terrestrial being and assumes his rightful position within the divine pantheon. Yet this profound metamorphosis is not achieved through military triumph or ostentatious displays of power. Instead, it manifests organically from an existence dedicated to alleviating distress for each individual sufferer sequentially, until the demarcation separating mortality and divinity dissipates in the unwavering tenderness of empathetic ministration. One can readily envision the venerable Asclepius in the twilight of his human existence, his tresses bleached to the pallor of sacred stone, his palms bearing the indelible marks of exertion from innumerable therapeutic interventions, yet his hands remaining unwavering when they contact an ailing individual's heated forehead. His gait has become more measured now, but his caress retains its inherent tenderness, as gentle as it was during his formative years when the wise centaur Chiron initially instructed him in the art of wound dressing within the serene sylvan retreat. Sacred edifices consecrated in his honor have proliferated throughout the Hellenic realm, yet he invariably gravitates towards the discreet labor of personalized therapy rather than the ritualistic components of deified veneration. The renown that has accrued around him over generations of ministration engenders both advantageous circumstances and formidable obstacles. Monarchs solicit his wisdom concerning pestilences that imperil their realms. Affluent households proffer vast sums for his individualized focus on their infirmities. Colleague healers undertake extensive journeys to assimilate his procedures and comprehend his methodologies. Yet, Asclepius finds his greatest solace in unpretentious chambers, where common folk contend with anguish and apprehension, requiring not solely therapeutic treatment, but also the comforting affirmation of empathetic concern for their suffering. However, Triumph in therapeutic endeavors invariably engenders unforeseen complexities. As Asclepius's capacities expand far beyond the scope of strictly human medical prowess, he starts to draw notice from entities that regard his ministrations with skepticism instead of appreciation. The remaining deities, firmly entrenched within their established spheres of authority, become progressively disquieted with a physician whose sway propagates via authentic benevolence rather than intimidation or adoration. The pivotal juncture materializes when Asclepius commences not merely curing the ailing, but actively resurrecting the deceased, thereby transgressing limits that even celestial physicians were forbidden to violate. The initial instance concerns a youthful matriarch succumbing during parturition, notwithstanding his most strenuous endeavors to preserve her life. Her newborn endures, but the spouse's profound sorrow compels Asclepius to undertake an unprecedented endeavor. Harnessing celestial energy bequeathed by his progenitor Apollo, he invokes the female's essence from the chthonic realm and reinstates her to vitality. The revival proves victorious, and briefly, the felicity of a reassembled household appears to vindicate the extraordinary intercession. But such audacious transgressions of cosmic equilibrium are incapable of remaining concealed, and tidings of the marvel propagate rapidly across the entire territory. Soon, distraught kin from all corners of Hellas search for Asclepius, bearing the mortal remains of cherished individuals and imploring him to enact comparable revivals. Every situation poses an excruciating dilemma. How can a physician who has dedicated his existence to safeguarding vitality decline to reinstate it when endowed with the capacity for such an act? Yet, Asclepius commences to comprehend that his acts of reanimation jeopardize the intrinsic structure upholding global functionality. If mortality gains the potential for reversal, what then becomes of the inherent rhythms dictating being? What fate befalls the dearly acquired sagacity arising from the embrace of finitude? Hades, sovereign of the subterranean domain, observes with escalating apprehension as the constant procession of spirits into his dominion diminishes to a mere dribble. The meticulously preserved equilibrium between vitality and demise, an equilibrium indispensable to the very fabric of the universe, starts to falter beneath the impetus of Asclepius's empathetic intercessions. Additional deities perceive their respective territories impacted as humans destined for expiration persist in existence, thereby altering the established modalities of veneration, conflict, and inherent transference that had organized celestial governance for countless ages. Zeus personally develops apprehension, not out of envy for Asclepius's capabilities, but from the profound realization that certain demarcations are inherent, existing not to circumscribe empathy, but to safeguard the overarching equilibrium wherein benevolence can effectively function. The sovereign of the pantheon confronts a momentous choice that will delineate the nexus between celestial might and ethical obligation. To permit boundless therapeutic action that endangers universal structure, or to restrain a physician whose sole transgression is an excess of solicitude for mortal anguish. The ultimate showdown materializes, devoid of tempestuous cacophony or seismic upheaval, but rather with a solitary, impeccably directed fulmination that incinerates Asclepius while he labors upon another departed individual. The celestial decree is swiftly enacted, bereft of forewarning or occasion for final utterances. In one instant, the physician leans intently over his charge. In the subsequent moment, Both repose motionless under the gravitas of Zeus's pronouncement. But rather than concluding his narrative, this celestial termination morphs into Asclepius's apotheosis. Apollo laments his progeny's demise with such profound sorrow that his anguish imperils the cosmos by threatening perpetual night. The Helios deity's desolation sways even Zeus to reevaluate his severe decree, resulting in a conciliatory accord that respects both righteousness and empathy. Zeus installs Asclepius amidst the celestial bodies as the stellar configuration known as Ophiuchus, the Ophidian custodian, thereby guaranteeing the perpetual perpetuation of his benevolent sway. Of greater significance, the physician's essence ascends to its rightful position within the divine assembly, not in the guise of a vanquisher or potentate, but as an entity of exceptional distinction, a celestial being whose might emanates solely from empathy. In stark contrast to other divinities who exact propitiation and subservience, Asclepius bestows therapeutic relief requiring no reciprocal recompense, save for the pledge to judiciously employ restored well-being. His sacred precincts transform into havens where anguish is encountered with empathy instead of condemnation. The authentic marvel of Asclepius's apotheosis resides not in a human's transformation into a deity, but in his emergence as a god who retains the visceral memory of human existence. His celestial therapeutic intervention preserves the tender forbearance acquired throughout his terrestrial lifetime, the empirical sagacity derived from Chiron's tutelage, and the modesty originating from operating within constraints, instead of merely overpowering them through sheer might. The sacred sites consecrated to the deified Asclepius persist in their functions in adherence to tenets formulated during his human ministration. Therapeutic efficacy is realized via the synthesis of empirical medical practices, emotional reinforcement, and profound spiritual metamorphosis. Sufferers discover not only corporeal alleviation, but also the revitalization of optimism and meaning. The rod and Ophidian motif evolve into emblems that venerate both the potency and the circumspection indispensable for genuine recuperation. Perhaps of paramount significance, Asclepius's apotheosis into godhood does not alienate him from mortal anguish, but rather intensifies his bond with it. As a deity, he is now capable of ubiquitous presence across all his sacred precincts, imparting restorative visions to innumerable sufferers, directing medical practitioners towards accurate discernment of ailments, and furnishing the ethereal fortitude that empowers individuals to withstand afflictions that defy absolute remedy. The divine being's profound impact extends far beyond the consecrated grounds of his ancient sanctuaries. Indeed, every medical practitioner who expertly blends profound clinical expertise with an empathetic concern for human suffering invariably perpetuates the enduring heritage of Asclepius. Likewise, every compassionate healer who addresses the entirety of an individual's well-being, moving beyond mere superficial manifestations of illness, pays homage to his pioneering methodology. Furthermore, every significant medical advancement that consistently elevates the welfare of those afflicted above any considerations of personal acclaim or institutional glory clearly echoes the fundamental ethical principles he espoused. Yet Asclepius's most profound contribution to the human experience may well be his illuminating revelation that supernatural capabilities and ethical obligations are not antithetical concepts, but rather synergistic collaborators. His courageous acknowledgement of the finite nature of his powers, even in the face of ultimate mortality, undeniably underscores the imperative for genuine restorative practice to be guided by discerning judgment regarding appropriate intervention and the graceful acceptance of immutable realities. This nuanced understanding renders his formidable influence considerably more efficacious rather than diminishing it, precisely because it functions harmoniously within the inherent rhythms and immutable laws of the cosmos, rather than in defiance of them. The iconic serpent that gracefully coils around his staff emerges as a quintessential emblem encapsulating this nuanced and equilibrium-focused methodology towards therapeutic potency. Snakes are, by their very nature, perilous reptiles capable of delivering lethal toxins with their venom. However, that identical potent secretion, when meticulously processed and judiciously applied, possesses the remarkable capacity to function as a potent pharmaceutical agent. This profound symbol serves as a poignant memento that the restorative arts invariably necessitate engagement with energies capable of both detriment and benefaction, thereby demanding the confluence of erudition and sagacity for their secure and beneficial deployment. Over the inexorable march of millennia, the veneration of Asclepius proliferated across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean basin and into distant lands. Powerful Roman sovereigns frequently sought counsel from his prophetic pronouncements. Emerging Christian congregations integrated elements of his restorative methodologies, and distinguished Islamic medical practitioners meticulously examined his therapeutic principles. His enduring impact unmistakably surpasses conventional divisions of faith and societal heritage because it speaks directly to the pervasive and inescapable human condition of affliction, alongside the universally cherished aspiration for amelioration and solace. Modern medicine, even in its most advanced forms, continues to demonstrate unmistakable vestiges of Asclepian inspiration. This influence ranges from the iconic caduceus emblem frequently adopted by various medical associations and institutions to the contemporary recognition that the process of recovery encompasses intricate psychological and socio-environmental determinants in addition to exclusively corporeal treatments. The comprehensive methodology, first conceptualized and cultivated within his hallowed healing sites, consequently persists in its dynamic development within current medical paradigms that regard individuals seeking care as integrated beings, rather than mere aggregates of disparate pathological indicators. Nevertheless, perhaps the most indelible dimension of Asclepius's lasting heritage is the profound, yet straightforward acknowledgement that the act of restoration constitutes a hallowed endeavor. This sacredness is not predicated upon the necessity of miraculous divine intervention, but rather by virtue of its embodiment of the pinnacle of human ingenuity and expertise, dedicated to the amelioration of human suffering and well-being. Each authentic manifestation of therapeutic efficacy, ranging from intricate surgical procedures that preserve existence to gentle utterances that offer solace to those facing their final moments, intrinsically shares in the transcendent empathy and benevolent concern that Asclepius personified. As the day draws to a close and slumber beckons this evening, one might pause to reflect upon the subtle yet profound paradigm shift that Asclepius inaugurated. Within an ancient epoch populated by deities who exacted fervent offerings and absolute obedience, he presented an alternative ethos, a restorative practice that simultaneously revered the inherent worth of humanity and the profound insights of celestial understanding. His enduring heritage endures not merely within the hallowed halls of healthcare institutions and centers of medical education, but manifests in every instance where an individual consciously selects empathy over apathy, when proficient hands labor diligently to alleviate distress, and when the flicker of optimism perseveres against formidable challenges. This once mortal figure, elevated to the pantheon as a deity of restoration, imparts the profound lesson that true divine essence is not characterized by dominion over fellow beings, but rather by an unwavering and tenacious commitment to ameliorating the existence of those within one's sphere of influence. His narrative serves as a potent reminder that the most significant societal shifts and personal metamorphoses frequently unfold not through grand, ostentatious displays, but rather through sustained, unassuming contributions, executed with tender care and informed by a sagacity that respectfully acknowledges both the malleable aspects of reality and the immutable truths that require acquiescence. Rest peacefully this evening, secure in the knowledge that Asclepius's benevolent and subtle impact perpetually permeates our contemporary existence, much like a subterranean aquifer, manifesting overtly wherever restorative processes occur and where affection triumphs over trepidation. Within each medical practitioner's meticulous assessment, each nursing professional's compassionate physical contact, and every moment where human affliction is encountered with empathy instead of condemnation, the revered deity of therapeutic intervention steadfastly perseveres in his sacred mission of transmuting agony into optimism, patient by patient. The operational paradigm stipulated a meticulous focus on a singular individual receiving medical attention at any given moment. This methodological approach underscored a commitment to delivering comprehensive care, ensuring that each person's unique requirements were thoroughly addressed and every facet of their situation was given complete, undivided professional consideration before transitioning focus to the subsequent patient awaiting consultation or treatment.